Welcome to another episode of Forbidden Films.
This is a podcast about the movies they won't make anymore. I'm Barry Germansky, a film producer.
And I'm Wayne Kramer, a writer-director. Today we're taking a deep dive into the work of one of my favorite filmmakers, Brian De Palma, a director who has courted controversy for most of his career, but especially during the 1980s, starting with Dress to Kill, followed by Blowout, Scarface, and peaking with Body Double. All four of these films, made in consecutive order, got a strong reaction, sometimes ridiculously out of proportion from critics and audiences. I think they represent the most potent period of De Palma's filmography, a period that defined, in my opinion, the director's signature cinematic brand. Other than Carlito's Way, which happens to be my favorite De Palma film, and he's most accomplished in my book, these films are the ones that I find the most rewatchable, along with Phantom of the Paradise. Which is not to say his other films don't speak to me, because many of them do. I just find myself revisiting these the most. And 3 out of the 4 keep getting better and better.
Well, De Palma is also one of my favorite film directors, and one of the reasons for that is because I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, and probably no other filmmaker has carried on Hitchcock's aesthetic and thematic legacy more than De Palma. And really, I see him as, and this is a generalization, but I basically see him as Hitchcock on steroids, or in some cases, psychedelics. Like if we're talking about Carrie and the prom scene specifically. But yeah, his Hitchcockian vibes are one of the reasons why I'm drawn to his work from the get-go. And then beyond that, I love the way that he indulges in this sort of operatic aestheticism, no matter what he's making a movie about. And he also, though, undercuts that type of sort of larger than life filmmaking with editorial barbs. And usually those barbs are tongue in cheek. So he has a very interesting, sly style that I really resonate with.
And he's also a very satirical filmmaker, I
Yes,
find.
for sure. And that's what I meant when I said editorial barbs. They're often satirical in nature. So often what you see on the surface isn't the full story. In a way, what he's doing he's winking at the audience. Or he comes up with, let's say, a cinematic equivalent of a wink. And in that sense, he's similar to Hitchcock too, because
He's a
Hitchcock
very
often was tongue in cheek too.
he's a very gleeful filmmaker in that he
Yes.
takes great joy in tormenting the audience or getting a rise out of them, or presenting a set piece that he knows is going to get talked about or deliver the goods. And I've always been drawn to De Palma, especially when discussing the new Hollywood filmmakers and the filmmakers who made their bones in the early 70s, mid 70s, and then also kept doing some of their best work into the 80s. And De Palma, I feel, has always been the most underrated of that group, which includes Spielberg and Scorsese and Coppola and Peter Bogdanovich and all those guys. Because I think De Palma always went a little bit provocative but pulpy at the same time.
Yes.
And while those other filmmakers, let's say Bogdanovich, for example, sort of always took a more cerebral approach and a more formal aesthetic, and Spielberg always stayed in the PG lane for the most part, De Palma was a provocateur, and he was not afraid to play with tropes like sex and violence. And while he was definitely influenced, and it's self-admittedly influenced by Hitchcock, and has said as much that he felt Hitchcock was a neglected director in terms of form and a master filmmaker, and he wanted to keep the filmmaking reputation of Hitchcock alive, but do his own thing with it. He's also fascinated by international filmmakers, and I think was very much also intrigued by, say, Dario Argento,
Oh,
which leads
definitely.
which leads us to discussing the first film from this early '80s period, which is Dress to Kill. And Dress to Kill is essentially De Palma's Giallo. And I saw Dress to Kill in South Africa probably when I was around 16. But the movie came out, I was probably, let's see, I was probably, so Dress to Kill came out in 80. I was 15 when the movie came out, and it was heavily censored in South Africa and restricted to nobody under 18. And I could not get into a movie theater to see it. And I remember being at a movie theater. It was a complex of movie theaters, and I was getting taken, I believe, by my parents' family to see Chariots of Fire, which was a PG movie. But in the theater next door, I knew they were showing Dress to Kill. And it just completely like fucked with my brain because the whole time I'm sitting through Chariots of Fire, I'm saying, why am I sitting through this fucking boring shit about these runners? I need to be in that other theater seeing Dress to Kill. I cannot believe that I cannot get in to see this motherfucking film. And
Yeah, if De Palma had made Chariots of Fire, there would be more stakes involved in the races. You know, if you they would die in gruesome ways if they lag behind or something.
it was not enticing to me. And I think I resented the film for many, many years afterwards for being the film that kept me from seeing Dress to Kill, or the film that I had to settle for while Dress to Kill was on spooling, like in the next theater. Then I think about maybe 2 years later, I found this video store not far from the school I was going to, and it was a video store that comprised mostly of pirated movies. And they had, whether they knew it or not, because I guess most of their films got recorded off television or off British VHSs, they had the uncut Dress to Kill. Now, it wasn't the unrated cut, which I only saw later when I came to the US, and I didn't even know there was another cut of Dress to Kill, which was De Palma's preferred cut of the film, which has the more explicit shower sequence in the beginning, and I don't know, and some more violence as well during the killing of Angie Dickinson, and also the killing or the dream sequence killing of Nancy Allen at the end. But anyway, I got the R-rated cut of Dress to Kill, which, to put it in perspective of censorship, that was cut to shit, the R-rated cut in South Africa. So you saw, I don't believe you saw almost any nudity in the shower sequence in the beginning. It's probably the equivalent of a TV cut of the film. I'm sure it played at some point on television and got everything chopped out. And I saw it and I just fell in love with it. And I'm trying to think if I believe I had seen Carrie before or around very close to that time. I actually think I got the uncut Carrie from the same store, if I'm not mistaken. So
Had you seen any Hitchcock films at that point?
I had seen Notorious, which to this day is still my favorite Hitchcock, and I had seen Psycho. Psycho is a funny story because I'd heard so much about Psycho that I had thought it was going to be a really more explicit film. And it was playing at a repertory theater in Johannesburg, and I begged my mother to let me go. And I was very young. I think I was 14, 13. And so she dropped me and my friend off at this theater, and I think they had to talk to the theater manager to get us in. I did not, I thought it was great, by the way. I loved every frame of it, but I really thought I was going to be in for something way more explicit and gory.
And that's one of the big differences between the two filmmakers right there. De Palma is far gorier than Hitchcock ever was, more explicit, and also more lurid consistently. Even
Well,
though Hitchcock at times has those qualities in some of his films, but generally speaking, De Palma goes further. And part of that is to do with the fact that the rating system
yeah,
changed over
that's what I
time.
was going to
Yeah.
say. Hitchcock himself has admitted that he was mostly restrained by censorship and what he could get by with the ratings board or whatever was in the UK. So by the time the 70s rolled around and he's doing Frenzy, he's starting to let some of that out. And
That's
Frenzy
right.
has nudity and it's got more gruesome killings.
Correct.
And I think Hitchcock is quite actually resentful that censorship restrictions didn't fall away while he was in his prime. I think Hitchcock looked at the work of De Palma and maybe guys like Sam Peckinpah, Arthur Penn, and filmmakers of that period, and I think was quite envious that they could make their films unrestrained by what he had to do in the day. And it would be
He had
very
to be
interesting.
more he had to be more suggestive instead of outright showing things.
Yeah,
And so the re
which actually made those movies feel sometimes a little sleazier than what I would think De Palma's movies are, because he was kind of not, he was like winking at the audience, whereas De
correct.
Palma's going, "You want to see boobs? Here's boobs. You know, you want to see people getting their throats cut? Here you go." So, getting back to Dress to Kill, when I finally did see it, I loved every second of it, and I have seen Dress to Kill so many times over the year, and each time I get to see it in better quality. Because I don't believe I did see Dress to Kill in a theatrical print. I did see it on a censored 16 millimeter print at one point when I did 1 year of this kind of mediocre film school in South Africa, which I dropped out of from doing. But they did show a couple of 16 millimeter prints there, so I could tell all the stuff that had been censored from Dress to
Yes.
Kill. But you know, having just watched it recently on 4K and before the 4K on Criterion's Blu-ray, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking movie. I
Yes.
think it was the cinematographer Ralph Bodie, I think maybe. I might have to correct myself about that, but I think I have a feeling he was the cinematographer. And
Yes, he was.
it's very interesting to see De Palma take the giallo template and do his own version of it when guys like Dario Argento admit to being influenced by early De Palma.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
so it's you know, it's one influencing the other, topping each other.
Well, if you see
Because
sisters, you
I
can see
think Dress
that.
to Kill is influenced by the bird with the crystal plumage. So that's
Yes.
yeah. And Dario Argento's bringing in the black gloves and the razor and the killer stalking the beautiful women, and De Palma's women in Dress to Kill look like they straight out of a Dario Argento movie, and the modern production design. There's so much aesthetically cool about Dress to Kill, and I have to say this: Dress to Kill, out of all the De Palma movies, has his best and most subtle use of split diopters throughout the film. And sometimes you don't even realize you're seeing a split diopter because he's blocking the actors to be just in different focal lengths. But when he uses the split diopter, you almost can't tell that they are.
Yes,
And it
that's true.
creates a very unsettling feeling because your eye isn't really recognizing why everything is in focus like that, because the actors aren't radically apart from each other. And it creates this very unusual vibe throughout the film. And he's using the split diopter not so much to create a gag effect, but to keep both characters in focus. But at the same time, the split diopter is commenting on the personality
That's
split,
right.
which is the whole reveal in the film of Michael Caine ultimately being the killer, who is his male personality is in conflict with wanting to have a transplant,
Sex change.
sex change into a woman, but his maleness keeps pulling him back. And anytime Michael Caine's character, Dr. Elliot, gets aroused by a woman, Bobby comes out and does her psychotic damage by
That's
killing
right.
whoever he's is the object of his sexual interest.
And you can see the clear psycho influence there. And you can
Yeah,
also see by extension the Robert Bloch influence, not just in the case of the Psycho film adaptation, but in many of his other
Yeah,
novels and short stories, which were adapted into films,
it's
which Brian De Palma
absolutely
saw, I'm sure.
yeah, it's absolutely De Palma's Psycho, and in my opinion, Psycho meets Dario Argento, which Dario Argento was probably influenced by Hitchcock to start with. They all seem like they're
Correct. And also
influenced by
there's a bit of
Hitchcock.
Marnie in here, especially with the fake wigs and what do you call it? Vertigo. There's definitely some Vertigo in here.
I definitely think
Um,
he's Vertigo's body double, but we'll get to that.
oh,
We'll get
Vertigo.
to
Yeah,
that
well,
later.
Vertigo resurfaces in multiple De Palma
Yeah.
films. But like for example, even just the fact that in Dressed to Kill there's an extended museum sequence, right? That
Oh,
seems like it's coming from Vertigo.
and it's a masterpiece. It may be my favorite De Palma set piece out of anything he's done, and there is so much. There are so
Yeah.
many great set pieces. Just to get back to the split-diopters again, he uses them so beautifully, like in the scene where Nancy Allen is being stalked by Bobby in the subway, and she's jumped on, and she's also being hunted by that gang, those black gang members,
Yes.
and she jumps on the train, and the cop is like, what's your problem? And she says, those guys are after me. And then they both lean out of the train to look down the tracks to see who she's referring to. And when her head's turned away in the one direction, he's got a split diopter of keeping Nancy Allen and the cop in focus. And then he uses the split diopter to keep the back tracks in focus. And you see Bobby leap onto the train. It's so fucking good.
It
It's
is. Very
so
well done.
creepy. And just that De Palma's brain is figured out that he's going to do that. And the use, again, of the split diopter keeping someone so close in focus and in the back, it's not just for a gag. He wants to show us Bobby jumping
That's
on the
right.
train, like really clearly. And also, he uses mirrors throughout Dress to Kill,
Oh, definitely.
basically to say, here's Bobby in the same shot with Dr. Elliot. And
Or the
I will,
elevator scene.
yeah, but I will contend before we discuss that, I will contend that in the first time we see Angie Dickinson's Kate character having her first session with Dr. Elliot, De Palma gives away the whole ball game. And he does it without the murder having taken place yet. But Kate says to Dr. Elliot, well, Dr. Elliot said he's talking about her sex life, and Kate says to Dr. Elliot, "Well, do you find me attractive?" And he goes, "Well, yes, I do." And then she says, "Well, do you want to sleep with me?" And then De Palma, to get Michael Caine's reaction, cuts to a mirror across from him on the wall, and you see Michael Caine's reflection, sort of his reflection being aroused
Yes.
by what she's saying and quite self-satisfied about it. And it's definitely, that's not Dr. Elliot who's having that response. Bobby's in the room.
That's
And
right.
he gives it to us that early in the film.
Well, let me
And I
ask you
love,
something about
yeah.
that. When you first saw the movie, I don't know if you can remember this or not, but when you saw that scene for the first time, did you immediately suspect um, Dr. Elliot as being the killer or involved in the killing somehow? Or
Well,
what did you make of that?
I felt that Dr. Elliot played a little off, especially in those
Yeah, because I
mirror.
definitely thought, I mean, even his performance, though, Michael Caine's performance is off in many ways. He's like too stiff at times, or he's withholding
Yeah.
his emotions, or, any number of things that are just off about his performance.
But you
So,
know what? You know what's so curious about it? You asked me, did that give it away? I'll tell you what gave it away, but in a way, it doesn't. Is that when you see Michael Caine in the Bobby wig and the coat and the sunglasses, it looks like Michael Caine. And I
yeah, a little bit.
and even in the trailers, I'm like, that's Michael Caine. But then he used he uses the decoy cop, and and apparently I think he used the woman who plays decoy cop to actually do the killing in the elevator, because Brian De Palma said in the documentary De Palma, he said you couldn't really tell it was Michael Caine in the wig and sunglasses. I didn't want to put Michael Caine into the dress and the wig and all that if it wasn't necessary. And the funny thing is, it still looks like Michael Caine, even when it's not him.
Well, yeah, the shape of the face.
So then I guess it's supportive of what De Palma's saying because, and then the movie really fucks with you, right? Because you don't know that there's a police detective whose looks very similar, and that's a little cheat on De Palma's part, having a blonde police detective in a leather coat. But
Yes.
you don't know that there's someone shadowing Nancy Allen, so he uses that person to deflect from Michael Caine being guilty of being Bobby because it's happening. He's using split screens to show that Bobby is stalking Nancy Allen at the same time that Michael Caine is listening to his message servers or is in his apartment or finding the razor stolen. So, sort of a rational audience member is not thinking, oh, there's a cop out there dressed up in as looking very similar to Bobby. They're thinking, well, Michael Caine can't possibly be the killer. And yet,
Yes.
and so that gives De Palma carte blanche to go a little bit further in exposing Michael Caine in the wig and the sunglasses, or I mean, because and I have to say, mate, watching this movie in 4K or on Blu-ray is the clearest I've ever seen it. So if I thought on VHS Caine already looked like Bobby, it's so much clearer when you're watching it
Oh, that's
in higher
interesting. Yeah, because
resolution.
I haven't seen it on 4K yet. But one thing I also wanted to say about the artifice of the characters, and specifically now I'm talking about Dr. Elliot, the artifice of his presentation, the wig, the coat, other things, the sunglasses, all of these elements create a surrealism that also distinguishes the movie from some of Hitchcock's films, although of course some of Hitchcock's films are also surreal, but in a different way. Because I think that De Palma relishes the artifice. So, for example, the wigs, the other details that we've discussed already, I think that he really embellishes those artificial aspects. And I find that that gives this movie and a number of his other films a sort of different surreal vibe. Do you feel that at all? Like, just like in other words, there's something uncanny about the atmosphere of this movie due to the fact that a number of the characters are sort of artificial in an overt way. Do you
Well,
get
I
that vibe at all?
well, I feel like he's definitely with the wig and the female attire. He's definitely quoting Psycho there because Norman Bates
Yes.
wears the wig
And
and
Marnie.
and a dress. And he De Palma goes back to that later on in Body Double when Melanie Griffith's character is
Yeah,
dancing
definitely.
her sexual dance, pretending to be Gloria Revel in the window.
Yes.
So De Palma is fascinated with using the bait and switch of identity to sort of misdirect you through the plot.
Of course, but again, the difference that I see is that other directors, and again, this is a generalization, but other directors, they would, let's say, make more of an attempt to misdirect the audience because they would not have these overtly artificial articles of clothing or a wig or anything like that, if that makes sense. Like, in other words, they would try to make a more realistic bait and switch type of situation.
Or they would just show you the point of view of the killer,
Yeah, that
and then you
too.
would sort of see the hand coming into frame of the razor. De Palma, it's interesting because De Palma is banking on the fact that it can't be Michael Caine because he's revealing somebody's watching Michael Caine, or he's revealing somebody is watching
But
Nancy
there's
Allen.
always a way.
No, I know, but that's why he's willing to show you more of the
Yeah.
face. And so we should talk about what was deemed really controversial about Dress to Kill, and I will run through some of those elements.
Yes.
First of all, Dress to Kill is definitely the raunchiest De Palma movie he ever made,
Yeah, I think so.
and
Starting with the title sequence. I mean,
showers,
the not the title sequence, but
the
well, no, it is
shower
the title
sequence.
sequence. Yeah.
And if you see the unrated shower sequence, De Palma is really pushing it in terms of the nudity and the lovingly close shots of it's supposed to be Angie Dickinson, but it's a body double, which also was the inspiration for him making Body Double years later. But it's like these close shots of her rubbing the soap over her nipples and in her crotch. And I mean, he's really going for it.
Yeah, I mean, he did that in Carrie too. This is like the continuation of it.
But not nearly as explicit.
Well, yeah, because this is well, yeah, at one point it actually becomes sex, right? So it's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a dream. It's a fantasy sequence, a
Yeah.
dream sequence that, or it's in Angie Dickinson's mind, I guess, is what she's thinking about to suffer this boring sex with her husband. Or actually, no, I think it's really what she's fantasizing in the shower, and then he uses like the orgasm sound to cross cut into her really having sex with her husband. But it could also be interpreted that that's maybe what she was thinking about while they were having sex. I
Yes.
think it's open to interpretation. But then this man comes out of the steam and grabs her and roughly assaults her, is even though it's her manufactured fantasy.
Correct.
So this is what she wants in the fantasy. But then people who will deem this film inappropriate by today's standards are going to be like, well, do women really have those fantasies? Because this is a white male director making this movie. And that may be his fantasy of what he thinks women's fantasies are.
And now that you're talking about that, this movie reminds me a bit of Belle de Jour, the Louise Buñuel film. Uh, there's all kinds of sexual fantasies that take on a surreal tinge. Um, so yeah, I think that that's
Right.
another interesting movie to pair with this
But
one.
but the fantasy, just to start with, in the first scene, that Angie Dickinson is having is ultimately becomes a violent fantasy,
Yes.
right? It's not just about her masturbating in the shower. It's about this guy grabs her and basically sticks his hand up her, and that is, I don't think it's unerotic. And the movie gives us permission to find an eroticism in it because she's having it. It's not actually happening to her. She's having the fantasy. But this
Yes.
is where we get into identity politics within filmmaking. Because it's a male director making this film, the male gaze is at work here. And so in today's climate, the male gaze is not legitimized in this kind of movie, this kind of erotic thriller. And at the same time, it's also interpreted as this is another version of a male director putting a beautiful woman in jeopardy throughout the movie, because going beyond this particular scene, you get Angie Dickinson, who's on the make for you know a lover or a sexual hookup in the museum, and it's this whole back and forward between, is this guy into me or am I going to go with it? Is he playing with me? And I love that sequence, but it ends up with her getting pulled into a cab by him, and they go to his apartment, and they have sex, and they have sex in the cab. But then afterwards, she gets doubly punished for
Yes.
her infidelity, because first of all, she finds out the guy has transmitted a sexual disease,
That's right.
which shocks the shit out of her, and she freaks out and she rushes out of the apartment and she leaves her wedding ring there. And then when she comes back for the wedding ring, as she reaches this guy's floor, she encounters Bobby in the elevator, and he hacks her to pieces with a razor in a
Yes.
very extreme, artistically beautiful and amazing,
Yeah, it's
but
very
it's
well done.
violent assault on this poor innocent woman. And De Palma, unlike Hitchcock, as you said, isn't suggesting anything. You're seeing the blade slicing through the palm of her hand across her face.
Yes.
He's totally in Dario Argento mode now. And in fact, Dario Argento, I believe, saw Dress to Kill and thought, I can go further.
Hmm.
And because Dario Argento's work was never that violent, in my opinion, before that. I guess Suspiria is pretty violent, but his giallos that came out after Dress to Kill seemed much gorier.
Well, Sisters has a moment that is quite gory,
Yeah,
but it's not as realistic as, and that could be just due to a
and it's a
budgetary
man
issue.
getting
I'm
and
not
it's a
sure.
man getting killed is the in the one.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that the one
true.
you're referring
Yep,
to?
yep. But
So
like
that
part
is
of
a
his face
very,
gets cut off, right? Like sliced off.
yeah, it's a very different thing when you're seeing
That's true.
the violence happening to women. And I get, and I get why. I mean, first of all, I understand it's the plot and it's the plot mechanisms. And it's not just it's not casual. It's not like, oh, I'm a serial killer and I see a beautiful woman and I'm going to stalk her and I'm going to slash her to pieces. It's built into the plot. She's dying. Kate's character is dying because she aroused Michael Caine to bring out Bobby. So it's
Yes.
related to what actually happens in the story. And De Palma shows it in all its gory, in its graphic glory. And
Yes.
I have not, I mean, it's cinematic. While
Definitely.
it is horrifying, it's very cinematic. And if anybody mistakes that for like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, they're not watching the same movie. De Palma is showing us these amazing shots, like in the mirror of the elevator. He's slowing down. He's going to slow motion. Pino Donaggio's incredible score in this movie is working overtime.
Yes.
It's very hyper stylized. The blood is super red. It's very cinematic, and I dig the cinema of it.
Yeah, so do I. And also, in many respects, it's Hitchcock on steroids because, like Hitchcock, De Palma breaks every moment down to its essence. Every moment of that assault in the elevator is broken down in a very
Yes,
strategic way.
it's
Um,
very storyboarded.
yes,
It's very stylized. De Palma is a fantastic film technician,
he
and
is.
I feel I belong in the same camp, which is you get two kinds of filmmakers. The guys who turn up in the day and say to the actors, let's see what you want to do, and my camera will follow you around. Or the filmmakers who turn up in the set and said, here's what I've envisioned, and I'd love you to stand here and do this. You have freedom of performance, but I want to use these shots. I want to be
Yes,
able to push in at this moment. I want to be able to pull back. I want the camera to do this, so do that, and please do the dance with me, as opposed to I'm documenting your dance.
correct.
And he's one of the most effective practitioners of that. Other directors who are really excellent at that is Spielberg and
Yes.
Scorsese and Park Chan Wook. So I love. I'm definitely in the camp of filmmakers who bring a vision to the film and not just simply step back and document it. And there's a lot of, and I've seen a lot of great films coming out of both camps, but my preference as a filmmaker is to bring the style and the thought out vision. And it can be adjusted on the day, absolutely. And De Palma always gets high marks from his actors. They always, in the interviews I've seen with them, I would say almost all of them felt that he was very collaborative with them and brought his A game and always knew what he was doing.
Yes.
And they didn't feel like they were pieces of meat. I mean, you always hear about Hitchcock saying the by the time he gets to the set, he's already directed the film in his head, and it's kind of a boring process for him. It's just torture to just get it out and document it on film. I think De Palma loves composing the music in terms of what his vision is and creating these shots. And like me, I suspect loves to see it come alive with what the film crew can do, and what the once the choreography is there with the cranes and
And
the
yeah,
booms and all of that.
but
So
but I was just gonna say, do you think it's a bit curious that today, when we have many films that are ultra violent and don't necessarily have a fraction of the substance that De Palma's movies have, do you think it's sort of bizarre that those movies don't get criticized for being style over substance, and they also don't get criticized for having paper thin characters, characters that are far less sophisticated or complex as De Palma's characters? There's certainly no Freudian aspects to most modern style over substance movies, you could argue. So I just find it very interesting that that seems to be the case. For example, if you just compare Dress to Kill with some of the John Wick movies, I just find it interesting that the critics don't seem to fault the John Wick movies for being style over substance or
well,
having
well
uh,
the John Wick movies are cartoons. They have no stakes. Now, while De Palma's violence is very cinematic, it's realistic in the sense that he's not having one guy fight off 500 assassins
Yes.
and shoot them, kill them, chop them, whatever, and literally has a hair out of place. When somebody, when Bobby kills Kate in the elevator, while he's using a stylized coverage of the scene, Kate's pain and her suffering is very real.
Yes.
So we don't for one second doubt that this could happen to somebody being murdered in an elevator. And the funniest thing about John Wick is in the last movie, and I'm not the biggest fans of these movies, they're very well executed in terms of just technical audacity, but I find they've got no stakes. And there's a scene where Keanu Reeves is like killing and fending off and doing whatever he does to kill 500 people in a room. And then there's a scene, in the same scene of something, he gets thrown out of a window or he jumps out a window, and you see him hit the ground and bounce on the stairs, and the audience feels him take this impact, and everybody goes, "Ooh, my God." And I'm thinking, the other 1,000 chops and fucking bullets that you fired at him, everything, it causes no reaction from you, but he falls out of a window and you feel the impact because suddenly for that one little second in the movie, it got real.
Yep.
And we felt the characters and felt the consequences of cement meeting the human body. De Palma, even in his mob-related action shootouts, presents style and audacity in camera moves, but he never oversells unrealistic action.
Correct.
When people like in the
So I find the critics who accuse his movies of not having enough substance, especially the Hitchcockian ones, the ones that are seen to be homages to Hitchcock films, I find those criticisms strange, especially by today's standards of film criticism, because let's say Angie Dickinson's character in Dress to Kill is a very complex character, as we've already sort of outlined, right? In other words, she has all these complex sexual fantasies, and there are many contradictory aspects of her character, right? She can be analyzed in a very sophisticated way. So I just find it puzzling that for some reason it's De Palma who gets criticized unfairly for these things, but other filmmakers get away with far less substantive, violent movies. I just find it very strange.
I think they get away with it because their violence and their action tips into being generic. There is nothing distinctive there's nothing engaging about it watching one superhero type guy kill 400 people because it's beyond bullshit.
Yeah.
But even you take Rocky, when Rocky gets in the ring with Apollo Creed, especially in the early films, you fear for what this guy can do to him.
That's right.
Because it's grounded. This is before he fought Drago in Rocky IV, when it became superheroes. But in the first two Rocky movies, he's a real guy. And he's got real weaknesses. Like in the second one, they fear he's going to lose his eyesight. And he's going in fighting.
And he doesn't always win, depending on which movie we're talking about.
Yeah, and even when he does win in whichever one we're not going to give away, it's hard won.
Yes,
we're not sure until the last second if he's capable of winning. But back to De Palma's films, I think it is because he creates complex characters. Because in the short time that Angie Dickinson is on screen, we do get to know her, and we do feel an empathy for her, and we see her relationship with her son and her unhappy marriage and how she's trying to straighten out her life or find some kind of meaning in her life, which fatally brings her to the last psychiatrist or last shrink you want to engage with because he's a fucking psycho. But that's why when she does get killed, and even with De Palma's heightened execution of the killing, which makes it even more so, we're saddened by her murder. We are shocked by her murder. because she was a real character to us. She wasn't just another henchman.
That's right.
And what I think the controversy again that always follows De Palma, and you see it in Dress to Kill, is there are people who want to step back from the movie and say, it's not a movie to me. This is happening in the world. There are psycho men killing women like this, taking pleasure in killing them and abusing them, and you've turned it into an entertainment. And you've done it so well and so candy coated because of the cinema style you bring, that it doesn't feel real, because if it felt real, it would turn us off. But because you're using cinema in a very effective way, in a very seductive way, you're making it entertainment. You're making part of the fun of Dress to Kill being, oh boy, did you see Dress to Kill? You can't believe the elevator scene. It's so shocking. So there's,
but because of this, but the satirical aspects also give him cover, because basically anything that may offend you in this film, one could argue it's to some extent self-reflexive or self-consciously rendered.
But those critics aren't thinking it
That's
through
true.
as deep as that. They're knee-jerk reactions, because also what De Palma was putting on screen hadn't really been done that in your face before. I don't know if there was an American movie that showed your woman being cut up in an elevator to that degree of explicitness and
in that kind of context. Yeah.
Yeah. And also remember, the murder of Angie Dickinson in Dress to Kill is the murder of Janet Leigh in Psycho. It's the taking the lead actress and shocking the audience by killing her by I guess it's the end of the first act, when you thought she's one. I mean, I think she's lead billed after Michael Caine in the movie.
Well,
So
when you first watched this movie, did you think of any of its antecedents? Like, for example, had you seen Psycho before you saw Dress to
I
Kill?
had seen Psycho before.
So was that on your mind? I'm just curious when
No,
you
it was.
watched it.
I'm trying to remember, and this is where my memory might be faulty, because I followed American films usually via English magazines, film magazines. I think they were already discussing Dress to Kill and giving away the fact that Angie Dickinson's character dies early.
Oh,
So
okay.
I feel I knew going into it that she was going to be killed early. So I don't think there was the shock and surprise of if I was seeing it first run in America when it first came out. And I kind
Yes.
of wish I had. But it was still impactful. It was definitely like, because De Palma he doesn't just kill her in Dress to Kill. He creates this enormous tension of malevolence where we know something bad's going to happen to her
Yes.
the moment she leaves the apartment. The music is telling us, the camera is telling us, we see shots of Bobby stalking her as she gets on the elevator, and we think she's escaped Bobby because she's going down. But then while she's on the elevator, she remembers she's left her wedding ring in the apartment. So now she has to go up. And then the elevator has the slow crawl up, but on the way down, the little girl's looking at her. It's a very interesting thing what he's doing with the woman and the child who get on the elevator, because the little girl is looking at her, and the little girl is kind of saying, "I see you. I
Yes.
I see your shame. You've done something wrong, lady, and you're going to pay for it." Like, it's a haunting little exchange. I'm not sure if that's what De Palma really was thinking, because I've not heard it from his own lips. But my sense was that this little girl's almost foretelling her murder. It's
Yes, you
like the
could say
little
that.
girl's looking at a ghost. Even when the little girl walks out of the elevator with the mom dragging her and the mom saying, "Don't stare at strangers," she keeps looking back.
Yes,
It's quite a chilling little moment. Then
definitely.
by the time the elevator doors open, when she gets back to that floor, the dread has set in, and I know she's never stepping out of that elevator.
And also the film gets to live up to its title.
And isn't yeah, exactly. And she's wearing a white coat, right? So yeah, I think she's wearing a white coat. So the blood is
Yeah,
splattering.
the
It's so
contrast.
visible. And De Palma's cutaways are amazing, like the blood splattering the elevator buttons.
Yes.
And I love that last moment where Nancy Allen she's come up to the elevator, and she's looking in, and she can't see Bobby yet. but she sees Angie Dickinson like dying on the floor there, like reaching out for her. And as she sort of reaches towards her, she notices Bobby in the mirror. And it's such a creepy moment because
It is.
now Bobby is seeing her, and at the same time, Nancy Allen's able to grab that razor at the last moment.
And that's an example of what I referred to earlier as the ostentatious artifice of Brian De Palma. I mean, he's like that at times because as exquisite as that moment is, it's also highly um it's contrived, but in a good way. Like I don't mean this as a criticism. I mean this as something that I enjoy watching, that I admire for artistic reasons. Um, because the likelihood, for example, in real life of someone being able to look at a reflection in a mirror and see all this information and register it is probably not high, but it also creates this unique form of surrealism, which is, I think, central to some of Brian De Palma's movies, not all. Especially when he writes his own screenplays. If he's the writer of his own screenplays, he tends to be dreamier. He tends to
Yeah.
be closer to David Lynch at times, in fact, where let's say things aren't strictly realistic, right? He'll embellish something for poetic reasons.
I think he's a very underrated screenwriter. I, people mostly credit De Palma with being the director, and he's directed a lot of screenplays that he didn't write that are authored by like top screenwriters like David Mamet and David Robb and uh, David Coop,
Oliver
um,
Stone.
Oliver Stone, exactly. And he does a great job with their work. But movies like Dress to Kill and Blowout and Body Double, which are, I want to say they're more intimate movies, but they were definitely made on decent budgets, all of them,
Yes.
uh, for the time. They don't look cheap and independent. They have vision and
No.
they have scale to them. And and as a director, I can tell when you have a long shooting schedule because you could not be Brian De Palma and do the kind of stylized shots that require a lot of rehearsal on set just to get them right. That he has so much of it in all of his movies, and Dress to Kill is chock full of them.
Yes.
I don't know if he's using Steadicam in Dress to Kill. He may be using Steadicam in some of like the in
But
the
regardless, the amount of
but
preparation
but yeah,
would be
the
enormous.
following shots, I mean, it's Dress to Kill's got so many like camera tricks, the
Definitely.
so many split diopters. I think it's any whereas I found this kind of stuff so distracting in Bonfire of the Vanities, which I don't think is a very good movie at all. De Palma's style in Bonfire of the Vanities completely works against the storytelling in that film, in my opinion. But in Dress to Kill, it's elevating the film as in Blowout and as in Scarface,
I
and
may
to a
be one
certain
of the
degree
biggest
in
defenders
Body
of the
Double.
Bonfire of the Vanities, but I have a minority opinion.
Um, yeah, De Palma says it best himself. He says, if you want to enjoy my movie of Bonfire of the Vanities, don't read the book. Well, I had read the book, and his take on the book felt very cartoonish, I guess,
Yeah,
or
and that's why I actually personally love the movie, but it's not for everyone. Nothing's for everyone.
believe me, there's no bigger defender of De Palma than myself. And I have actually met him a few times.
Yeah, which is really cool.
And and he came to my editing room when I was cutting Running Scared because he was interested in Paul Walker for the Black Dahlia. So I showed him Running Scared. And at the end of the movie, he, he said, yeah, I think he liked it. It's hard to know with De Palma. He keeps his cards so close to his vest. But when I first started showing it to him, and like Running Scared has this wraparound where you see Paul Walker running with this kid in his arms, and the kid's got a bloodied shirt, and the idea is you're supposed to think the kid has been shot, and he throws him in his car, and he's driving desperately to get him some help or to get home is really what he's doing.
Yes.
And then the movie goes into like the title, and then we don't see that until we come back around at the end of Running Scared, and then you find out it's very different what you saw. It was actually Paul Walker had been shot, and the blood had smeared off Paul Walker's wound onto the kid, and that's why we thought the kid had been shot. But Paul Walker's desperately trying to make it home. So De Palma hadn't seen the back end of the movie yet, and as soon as I showed him like the opening, he said, "Stop the movie! Stop the movie!" He said, "I don't understand what you're doing here. Like, what is this you're trying to accomplish?" And I said, "Brian, it pays off in the end. It's not what you think it is." And we sort of had a back and forth about it, and then we started the movie again, and he didn't interrupt the movie. He watched all the way through. And when we finished the movie, he still seemed to have an issue with the fact, he said, "I don't think you need that beginning." And I said, I remember this. I said, "Brian, of all filmmakers, you're the last person who should say that to me, because you made two movies where you did the wraparound and you gave away the fucking movie. And you did Carlito's Way, which I think is a fucking masterpiece. It's my favorite film of yours. But I did not want to know Al Pacino was going to be killed at the start of the movie, because you took all the tension away from me." And he defended that by saying, it's a film noir trope, and I wanted that very sort of, I guess it was Sunset Boulevard kind of vibe or whatever, of this person who's going to die. I wanted the filmmaking to be so good that you would forget that had happened in the beginning of the film, and suddenly you find yourself doubling back, and that happens. And I didn't say it to him, but I thought, well, that's for stupid viewers who are not paying attention. I'm waiting for Al Pacino to get killed through the entire movie, and I wish I didn't. And then in Casualties of War, you show us Michael J. Fox on the train in the beginning, so we know he survived his ordeal in Vietnam. Two movies where I don't think you helped your movie by doing these bookends, and I think we agreed to disagree.
The first time you saw Carlito's Way, did you remember that Al Pacino's character had been shot?
I did.
Oh,
I
okay.
absolutely did, and I always thought that was part of the tension, because like Running Scared, you're waiting for the kid to get shot in the movie the whole time. That was the device in Running Scared, is I wanted to keep audiences on edge because they know he's been shot. They've seen the blood in his shirt, but they don't understand it's misdirection.
Yes.
In Carlito's Way, it's not. Pacino gets shot in the beginning, and it's shocking when it happens again. I mean, I think he does it very effectively, that we suddenly find ourselves in that train station.
Yeah, I think he does a great job with
where
that.
We're maybe not, where in the intensity of the action, we maybe haven't remembered that now we've finally arrived at this place. But I definitely knew at some point Pacino, I definitely knew it was a doomed narrative for Pacino, because I knew he wasn't going to survive the night. Whereas if I hadn't seen the opening, I would be rooting for him to survive. And De Palma took that decision out of my hands. Now, if you flip it around to Running Scared, you're waiting for the kid to get shot. When he doesn't get shot at the end, and you realize it's Paul Walker that got shot, the whole narrative of the movie changes.
Correct.
So anyway, it was just cool that he came to.
Yeah, definitely. That's a legendary moment right there.
And I got to show him the movie, and but De Palma, yeah, look, I love him as a filmmaker, but it's, I've had a couple. I met him at some parties and had conversations with him, and it depends on what night you get him. He's very amiable, or he's very guarded. He's a very cynical dude, but he's super smart. He's a brilliant guy and a brilliant filmmaker. And it's a travesty that he's not working as often as his contemporaries, and at their budgets.
Yes.
Oh, so also with Dress to Kill, talk about the problematic aspects of the film. I think even more problematic than the violence against women in Dress to Kill, through today's lens, I think the trans representation is just would get you killed, like Angie Dickinson in The Elevator, killed in that style, because not only is the trans person in this film presented as a homicidal maniac, but the trans person is fighting their own transness, so to speak. The trans person is conflicted, which in today's climate I don't see that narrative as being a popular one within the trans community, meaning if you're trans and you know it, and nobody can make you think you're not, no
Well, they
split
went after the
personality.
Silence of the Lambs for similar reasons.
But I don't think in Silence of the Lambs that character is even conflicted. I think that character just clearly wants to be a woman to the degree that he kills women to make a woman suit
No,
to
I
wear.
think, yeah, and I think, but just in general, point is, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that anyone who depicts transgender characters or anyone who might seem to be
And
transgender
the
in a
sin that
negative
is
way.
yeah, and the sin that is as big as the conflicting feelings of the trans character is that the film has been made by a straight white man, so they don't even give him permission to make a movie about a trans character anymore. That you have to be in the trans or gay or minority box to be able to make a film where you're gonna suggest a trans character is a homicidal killer. So while people enjoy Dress to Kill and certainly cinephiles enjoy it today, I think it's just fallen off the radar of maybe younger audiences who would be outraged against it. But I suspect if I were to announce a remake of Dress to Kill tomorrow using the same storyline, I would probably take a lot of knives in social media and saying, "How dare you make a movie in this day and age that takes this point of view that A, a
Yes.
trans person is going to be a killer, B, a trans person isn't really sure they are a trans person, and C, a lot of women die very bloodily." Well, not a lot of women, but two women.
Yeah. And of course, though, there are so many ways to defend the
And,
artistic decisions
yeah,
here.
and there's another small aspect is that when Nancy Allen is menaced on the subway, it's by black guys, so that will also be turned around. And
Yeah, because what we're really talking about here at the end of the day is certain people today will buy into stereotypes that are, that are basically counter stereotypes. So the thing is, not enough people today are just looking at the individual characters in movies as individual characters. There's this rush to box in the character, to make the character a part of a larger group.
yeah,
And I think that if you read a movie like this with an obsessive label making mind, you have a higher likelihood of needlessly being offended instead of just engaging with the material.
and it's a,
And
it's a fantastic story. It's
it
so
is.
clever. Everything in the film is there for a reason. There's no fat in this movie. Even the character bits, and you've and Keith Gordon playing yeah, Andrew Dickinson's son is a great character who himself is modeled over after De Palma,
You could
because De
even though
Palma,
argue that this movie is making fun of people who are, let's say, transphobic, because the explanation is sort of a satirical, or it's a parody, more accurately, it's a parody of the equivalent scene in Psycho, where Simon Oakland's character is explaining the
yeah,
psychology of Norman Bates. So that's another way to defend that particular aspect of Dress to Kill, the accusations of transphobia. You could actually argue that the movie, in some ways, is making fun of the idea that such a deranged psychological process could exist in a person. That
I
basically
don't
these are
think
just fears that are unfounded in people who might be transphobic.
I don't think the film is transphobic at
I don't
all.
either.
Transphobic at all, and I don't even think it's a legitimate criticism of the movie. De Palma is using the science or the psychology of a trans person as a plot device, and why should that be
It shouldn't. There's
forbidden
nothing wrong with it.
from making a story out of that? And if De Palma was a trans person himself, people would go, "Well, there you go. You got permission to do it about it because you're one of us." And I don't think in this world we need to be part of a particular tribe to make movies about a particular tribe. I think that is a recent phenomena, and I don't think it makes movies better.
No, I
And
agree.
and if you're a member of a particular tribe and you want to make a movie about these issues, make your own movie. But
But the other thing is, this movie satirizes all kinds of people, including Angie Dickinson's character, right? You said before she's punished for misbehaving according to how society at large would consider her some of her behaviors. So there are many characters and types, like not necessarily just full-fledged characters, but there are many types that are
Well, I
satirized.
was saying, like, the Keith Gordon character is based on De Palma, and when
Yeah.
he was younger, he found out his father was having an affair, and he did the same thing. He photographed him, and he followed him, and he got into his father's office when he had his mistress there, and he confronted his father, and he found the woman hiding in a closet, and it was super traumatic. Like, De Palma's putting a lot of himself into that character, and
He is.
he's exposing himself, which is, and De Palma was the science nerd as well when he was younger, so he made computers and messed around with cameras, and
Yeah, so
he's
you could
definitely like,
say, yeah, so you could say that when De Palma is obsessed with Hitchcock in any one of his films, you could argue that some of the obsession comes from the fact that he found a filmmaker who artistically commented on some of the fears or neuroses that he had in real life,
yeah. And
which is interesting.
I don't think De Palma meant any offense or is making fun of trans
No,
people
not at all.
in Dress to Kill. You know, he has those clips on TV where the guy who used to be a woman, or a guy who's a woman who used to be a guy, was talking about all the athletic things this person had done in their previous identity. And he was basically saying this is a fascinating realm of study and science, and there are a lot more people who are born into the wrong bodies than we think. And it's a great mechanism for an homage to Psycho, really,
Correct.
but updating it into a way where this subject matter can be really discussed, even to the degree at the very end of the movie when Nancy Allen is explaining to Keith Gordon how the actual surgery takes place, and he's grossing out the woman, she's grossing out the woman behind Keith
Yes.
Gordon. And again, there's another use of De Palma's split-diopters where he's keeping both the woman in the table behind them and Keith Gordon, and then the reverse shot of Nancy Allen and the people eating behind her. They're all kept in focus in the split-diopters.
Yes. And
And
also, this movie is not making a commentary or a solid judgment on certain characters or behaviors. What it's doing is saying, what if? What if a character struggled with
yeah,
these kinds of inner demons, for example? It's not trying to say like beware of all people who resemble this, right? That's not what it's
and,
trying to do at
and I,
all.
and I don't think films are obligated to present real cases and authentic science when you're telling a genre
Not at all.
fabricated thriller. It's the idea that there are trans people in society, and the idea that somebody could be conflicted about who they really are. I feel like the character could be feeling, I feel like I'm a woman, but I'm born in a man's body, so it's not so easy for me to just sever my maleness.
That's right.
And maybe that's bullshit. And maybe every case of somebody feeling like that way is, I am a woman, I'm trapped in a male's body. But the idea that the storyline seems believable, I buy into it. And yeah, I don't have anything invested in the trans community myself. I'm not a trans person, I'm not gay, I'm not is seen as a minority in that sense. But I think it's a really riveting storyline that pays off. It's not, the trans aspect of it is not frivolous in the movie.
No,
It is the reason the movie exists. It is it is the dilemma and the psychosis that this character is going through,
correct.
in the same way that anybody that deals with a psychological, whatever you want to, disconnect or that person's sexuality, and the same rep was thrown against movies that depicted lesbians as killers, or Cruising with Al Pacino, Basic Instinct. I mean, this is sort of the LGBTQ community has not looked favorably on any movie that depicted any gay person as being malevolent or psychotic outside of it being a fully gay scenario, a gay filmmaker, other gay characters. So Dress to Kill is definitely deals with these hot button issues that would make this movie in its current form very difficult to be made today. Although I would advocate that movies like this should be able to be made.
Same.
And if an audience turns up for it, great. And if you don't want to see it, don't go see it. It's excellent filmmaking. It's excellent screenwriting. The movie itself is part of the Criterion collection. It's not like the snobs at Criterion think it's a piece of shit or exploitation garbage. They think this is a legitimate artistic achievement, as do
I
I.
agree. And also, we do need some room for movies that are, let's say, sleazy. In this case, the movie's self-consciously sleazy at times. But I mean, art, the realm of art, allows us to experiment with ideas. It's better to experiment with potentially controversial ideas in the realm of art rather than in real life.
Absolutely. And Dress to Kill is super engaging. It's a fun movie to watch.
It is.
It's a movie that shocks people and you're with it. I maintain if you're on the verge of falling asleep because you're so fatigued and Dress to Kill comes on the screen, you're going to watch the whole damn movie because it's going to wake you up.
Definitely.
And I before we finish with Dress to Kill, I want to single out Pino Donaggio's score because I think it is easily one of his finest scores. In fact, my favorite scores Donaggio has ever done for Brian De Palma. Outside of I like Don't Look Now as well, but the score to Dress to Kill and Blowout and also Body Double are phenomenal scores, and he's
They
really
are.
bringing the Bernard Herrmann in it,
Oh, definitely.
but also bringing that his own sort of beautiful lush strings. And while Pino can scare the shit out of you with the mood and the tension he creates, he's also a very lyrical composer. And so when he does the quieter, more intimate moments like the Nancy Allen and the Keith Gordon characters when they're together, his music is very delicate and beautiful and well calibrated. But when you take the museum sequence or the elevator sequence or the dream sequence at the end, they are some of the best scored scenes in film history, period.
Yes. And it's interesting. You didn't mention Carrie's score.
Fantastic score. I love Carrie.
Yeah, that might be my favorite score of this particular composer. But he's doing many of the same things in Carrie that he's doing in Dress to Kill and
Because
the other movies you
he
mentioned.
matches De Palma's operatic soul.
For sure.
Donaggio is at his best when he's unleashed to be operatic with the orchestra. And De
You look at the
Palma,
prom sequence, for example, in Carrie, how lush and operatic the score becomes when she's having her moment of glory,
well,
Carrie.
my favorite moment of scoring in Carrie is when the mom tries to kill Carrie. That
Oh, that's
theme for
also
the mother,
amazing.
that repeating piano riff,
Very
it's
well
so
done.
haunting. And De Palma has always been fantastic with picking the right composer for the job. And I would say most of the scores in De Palma's movies are fantastic scores. I
Hmm.
mean, he's worked with Donaggio. He's worked with Ennio Morricone on Casualties of War and The Untouchables, and Untouchables got a nomination for Morricone. They are two fantastic scores.
And he worked
Then
with
he's
Bernard Herrmann.
exactly the Sisters and Obsession. And then he's worked with Mark Isham, a composer I've worked with 3 times, who I love Mark. And I think it's one of Mark's best scores too, The Black Dahlia. I
Yes.
don't love the movie. I think it's a very flawed movie. There's parts of it I really do like, but I think the best thing about The Black Dahlia is Mark's score. And then
And
also,
aesthetically in general, I really like that movie. The cinematography by
and
Vilmos
let's
Zsigmond is great.
Aesthetically it's wonderful. And let's also not forget Giorgio Moroder and Scarface, which is a
Yes.
brilliant score. And we'll talk more about that score when we get into the Scarface section. So now, why don't we move on to the movie De Palma does next, Blowout. So, Blowout, I saw when I was in high school. I think it was the 11th or 12th grade equivalent. And I remember sneaking out of school playing truant to go see this new De Palma movie because I knew it just opened and there was a theater about 20 minutes walk from my school. So I was very excited to go see Blood. And this is the first De Palma movie I probably saw on the big screen. And I fucking loved it. It broke my heart to hear that it was not a successful movie because,
When did you hear that it wasn't a financial success? At the time?
well, I could tell in South Africa it didn't get well attended. And then when I read about it, it seemed that it did not find an audience. Although it's interesting because I've been listening to watching these old Siskel and Ebert shows on YouTube, just curious to see what they thought of movies when they were first released. And unusual for Siskel and Ebert at that time, they were both big fans of Blowout. They got it, which is quite surprising because there are a lot of great movies I was shocked that they were not fans of, particularly like Blade Runner or Breakdown, brilliant Kurt Russell film,
Yeah, I really
or
like that movie.
Cutter's Way. They neither of them liked. I mean, there's so many like excellent movies that those guys just missed the boat on. Anyway, to get back to Blowout, it's a it's a really interesting movie. It's my second favorite De Palma movie after Carlito's Way. It's so brilliantly accomplished. De Palma said the movie was inspired by the sound mixing process in Dress to Kill because he kept saying to the sound designer, sound editors, why are you using the same old shitty, heard it 1,000 times before sound effects? Go out and get me some new stuff. So that turned on a light bulb in De Palma's head,
Yes.
and he manufactures this whole story out of that. Plus, interestingly enough, Blowout is not an erotic thriller, so it doesn't follow the template of Dress to Kill or Body Double. It's a paranoia thriller.
Yes.
And it's a very bleak film, but at the same time, it's so engaging. I don't think John Travolta is given a better performance than in this movie, maybe on the same level as Saturday Night Fever, but for me, it'll be these two are the great Travolta performances. He's peak Travolta. He's like at the perfect age. De Palma envisioned Blowout to be a smaller movie, and the characters are quite different. And I think he was always kind of interested in Nancy Allen doing it, but at the same time, here's Nancy Allen playing another hooker, and I think he felt like that wasn't going to be a good look for her. She was his wife at the time, and also didn't want to be that director cost his wife and everything. And then John Travolta called him up and said, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you working on?" And De Palma told him about Blowout, and Travolta said, "Let me read it." And when he came back and said, I really like this, I want to do it, and let's do it with Nancy Allen. And suddenly, because Travolta was like one of the hottest stars in the world at that point, suddenly the movie became instantly financeable at a decent budget. So this was, what year is Blow It? Is it 1982 or
81.
83? 81. Okay. So $20 million budget, which is pretty much what De Palma said they had. It's probably like an $80 million budget today. It's like a big movie, and
Yes.
Blowout has some huge sequences. That the whole parade sequence at the end is insanely choreographed, and
Yes.
there aren't CGI figures in the background enhancing it. Those are real people.
That's right.
There's helicopter shots. There's all kinds of, I mean, underwater stuff, shooting in a tank and shooting in Grand Central Station. And I mean, it doesn't fit. And the crazy thing about Blow It is it doesn't feel like a big movie. It feels so intimate.
Yes. At many intervals. But it's also basically doing for audio what Rear Window does for optics, I guess you could
What?
say.
He's also doing Blow Up.
Yeah,
You
blow
know,
up too, for sure.
it's kind of like the same plot, and even De Palma admits that.
Yes.
De Palma is very much a filmmaker inspired by other filmmakers and their work, and he's not afraid to go, I love that. Let me make my version of that. I mean, he even remade The Passion. I forget what the French movie is that was the original one, but even that movie he liked and felt like. I mean, that's the first time I think he's outwardly remade something. No, no, he did The Untouchables, which is a remake of a TV show, and
Yeah, it's
Mission
a loose
Impossible. But
remake. Yeah.
yeah, but there was just the idea of them. He never took an actual movie and used all the plot points to remake them. But
That's right.
I feel like De Palma always wanted to be a more commercial director than the business or the audience reaction to his work allowed him to be. But he never had as much commercial success as Spielberg and even Scorsese or some of those other filmmakers, or those Coppola. But he definitely had his hit movies. More, I mean, I've never had a movie that was even a hit on the level of Carrie, let alone Dress to Kill. Mission Impossible was
The
a hit.
Untouchables.
Touchables. Those were big, successful movies. And if a filmmaker got one or two of those in their entire career, they'd be damn lucky. So De Palma has had his share of hits. It's just not Steven Spielberg every time out.
Yes, and because his subject matter is more lurid and more and sleazier too, or
Yeah,
at least it can be perceived to be
no,
sleazy.
no.
It's like
I,
self-conscious sleaze. That's how I would describe it. Because he's never fully in earnest when he delves into the sleazy.
well, I feel a
Uh,
kinship. I feel a kinship with De Palma like that. And honestly, even I'm not trying to drop names here, but Tarantino one time said to me, "You know why your movies aren't more successful, Wayne? Because they're sleazy in a good way." But I
yeah,
was
there's
like,
nothing wrong with that.
at first I was like, should I be insulted? And then I was like, no, I get it. I get it. I do like sleazy movies, but I
Well,
like
here's the thing. Here's the
quality
thing.
sleazy
Life
movies.
life contains sleazy aspects. Therefore, artists should be able to comment on those sleazy aspects. How else are artists going to be able to convey what those things are? I mean, there's no other way of doing it. You have to get your hands dirty.
We all love sleazy movies. We just don't want to admit that. And I think, I mean, Blowout is probably one of De Palma's least sleazy movies, if you're going to put it out there. But he can't help himself, right? Because he starts he starts the movie with a pastiche of a schlocky horror movie with these college students all
But there
like
you go, right?
having
It's not in
sex.
earnest. It's exactly, but it's not in
And
earnest. See?
no, it feeds into the plot absolutely because it ends with the girl in the shower getting stabbed with the terror the pathetic scream
Yes.
that becomes then the search for the perfect scream throughout the movie. And what's so interesting about Blowout is so cynical because De Palma knows where this film's going to end up, but you don't. So the search for the perfect scream is played for laughs all the
That's
way through
right.
the movie until it gets real. And then it like hits us like a sledgehammer. And that's why it's so poignant and it's so moving because he fucking sucker punches us. And that ending is one for the books. And really, why we're including it in this section of forbidden films is because you don't get to make an $80 million movie or the equivalent of what a $20 million movie was in '81, and then and kill off your lead actress in a really violent, like disturbing way. And then you go one further and you take her scream, her death scream, and you plug it into your schlocky independent movie that you've been looking for the perfect scream for. It's so cynical and brilliant
And
and
ironic.
ironic and catches you off guard. And it makes so much commentary on the film business, on life, how life fucks you, on trauma, on just how he turns it around like you like to watch sex and violence. You're going to watch this movie that's full of sex and violence, and you're not even going to realize you're hearing a real person's, you're basically listening, watching a snuff movie, because when she screams, that woman is really being murdered, and you
And
won't
in
even know it.
and in our current age where it's becoming increasingly difficult to determine what is real and what isn't, this movie, if anything, is more relevant than ever before. With
Exactly.
AI now, for example, we see fake videos on social media platforms all the time, and we don't often know what is real and what isn't. So this movie, in a way, anticipates our current post-truth environment. Um, and it's also interesting because in a movie that is full of various kinds of artifice, the irony is that the scream, which is real, isn't identifiable as being real
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
characters who are so yeah, the characters, like in other words, the audience that we don't
It's
actually get
almost
to
the
see.
reverse. It's the
Yeah.
reverse of where we are today, where they want to present what's fake is real, but in Blowout, he's hiding what's real is fake.
Yes. And
It,
maybe no one will ever know.
nobody will know except him. And I think that's Travolta's form, or the character's form of penance for allowing Nancy Allen's character to get killed, for not being able to save her. I feel he wants to torture himself with that aspect of it for the rest of his life, knowing that her scream lives in this movie.
Or
Not
he just
just,
sold out.
well, no, I never for one second feel that he chose to put that scream into the film in a very frivolous way. I feel he is dealing with the worst kind of trauma, and he wants everything Nancy Allen went through, that she gave her life up for in that film, to be memorialized, even if it's in a schlocky Friday the 13th kind of movie. In the most cynical way possible, you have to realize, feel like she didn't die in vain, because part of her lives on.
Yes.
And the sad part about it is her scream isn't in like Lost Tango in Paris or The Godfather or anything. It's in just a truly nothing drive-in movie kind of thing. And the movie itself is a technical marvel.
It
It's got
is.
some of De Palma's best directing, best thought out shots. And of course it's classic De Palma. He's using the split screens. He's using like interesting camera technique, like the scene where he finds out that, I think it's the character Burke, has erased all his tapes, and the camera is circling round and round as De Palma is like going through his entire editing studio trying to find anything that hasn't been erased. And it's creating the impression of turning reels, and which is what he's looking for, and it's disorientating us. And it's also Travolta's mindset, like he's destabilized, and it's a great sequence.
For sure. And the
Yeah,
cinematography is great.
yeah, and the whole sequence where he takes Nancy Allen to the train station to meet what he thinks is the reporter, but it's really the assassin Burke, played by John Lithgow, in another one of De Palma's villainous roles for him. I think that's the third one. He That whole sequence, oh, my jaw was just dropping open. And even though I've seen Blowout at least 20 times, just watching how De Palma connects everything, like the camera's pulling back from like Travolta coming into the station, and then it's up to the guy who's watching them, and then across to Nancy. I mean, maybe not getting the order of what the staging is, but everything is connected to everything. De Palma does not just set up a locked off shot and go, and here's the action. He does a lot what Spielberg does, and they do it in different ways, but they let the camera tell the story. And De Palma
Definitely.
is always telling the story with his camera. He will not let the audience member get bored, but it's not just moving the camera for the sake of moving it. He's moving it in advance of the storytelling. and he's picking up somebody coming in, I think Burke is like high up on one of the higher floors of the station, and he's looking down, and he's following characters. Then it's back to Burke, and it's back to them, and then he's got the incredible like where Travolta he's wired Nancy Allen, and he's trying to follow them into the train station because at this point he knows that this isn't the reporter, and she's in jeopardy. And this, I mean, De Palma just plays with us because he literally toys with us like a cat with a mouse, because every time Burke doesn't kill Nancy Allen in that moment, we think she's going to make it. Like he's about to like strangle her with the garrots down in the lower levels of the station, and then they run into the guy who's cleaning the walls or whatever it is, and she's saved, and then she's on the train again. And we keep thinking he's going to make it, but even when De Palma gets in his Jeep and he starts chasing the train, and he starts driving through this massive parade, just like knocking shit over, and then he ends up like smashing his car, his truck, into the window of a store, and is unconscious. And we think, oh Jesus, like she's done for now. And then he comes out of it, and they're about to put him in an ambulance or arrest him or something, and he escapes, and he starts running, and the fireworks are going off. And we think, we literally, this is where I talk about stakes in a movie, and not, unlike a superhero movie or John Wick movie, going into this movie, you don't know who's going to survive what. So we are tense. And I really thought he was going to save her. I was devastated when he didn't save her, because De Palma follows through. He has the balls in that movie to like say, I know you care for this character. I know you want to see these two have a future, but I'm going to fuck you. You know, I'm going to stick my hand in your guts and twist it, because I'm going to steal this away from you. And I'm going to say the world fucks you. These conspiracy theories are real. They're evil people out there doing shit that you don't have the slightest clue. And if you're an everyman, if you're an ordinary person trying to stick your nose into it, you're gonna come out dead or very much fucked over. And
I wonder how much of an influence 3 Days of the Condor had on this movie.
But the 3 Days of the Condor actually has a positive ending.
Yes, but it has there are a number of similarities.
It's cynical, yeah. And also, you know, Watergate and Chappaquiddick, I think, is the one that he was really trying to shine a light on. And
well, even just the idea, though, that the truth will exist in the world in one form or another at the end of the movie, right? At the end of each movie, that's what happens. So there are a number of similarities, actually, if I think about it now.
You know, even more so in the world we live in today, everything is a conspiracy. Everything is a political conspiracy. All the assassination attempts against Trump there are people who swear that it was a political conspiracy.
Yeah, and because we have social media today,
I don't
hear more of those theories, and you're subjected to them more often.
I don't think though they were, because of how many people would have to be involved in the cover-up. And I also I think Trump's too much of a coward to know that somebody's going to fire real shots at him from a crowd and actually blow somebody out and kill them behind him. Not because I think he cares about the person who took the bullet behind him, but I think he cares about the bullet missing and actually hitting him. But the conspiracy lives out there. There are people who analyze his ear to death. And then the most recent one at the journalists event, that's a conspiracy because everybody was there and the vice president was taken out first and blah, blah, blah. So in the world of Blowout, the conspiracy is real, but nobody is going to believe it. And there's so much noise in the conspiracy ecosystem, you don't know what to think.
That's right.
And even with somebody I think as loathsome as Donald Trump, I'm still not willing to believe that he's capable of creating a conspiracy theory that puts him even within a mile of actual jeopardy. But what I also wanted to mention about Blowout is a bunch of the footage from when Travolta is trying to get to Nancy Allen and driving through the parade and creating all that chaos. It disappeared from the lab, I believe, or was destroyed in the lab, and they had to go and reshoot a ton of that. Now, can you imagine being the filmmaker or the producer on the film and having to deal with that fucking nightmare of...
That's a big nightmare.
I mean, it wasn't footage from like, oh, the intimate scene we shot in the room where we were in the motel room where we were talking about this or that. No, it had to be the worst possible day that you could steal that footage and lose the footage. And I guess he went back and filmed it again and just soldiered through. So it sounded like it was a tough film to make. And when you survive through something like that as a filmmaker, you almost feel like entitled to the movie to be successful. and when the movie's not successful, I can really feel De Palma's pain. But I think De Palma can sit back today and look at his filmography and be so proud of films like Dressed to Kill and Blowout, which were amazing films. That Dressed to Kill was successful. It enabled him to make Blowout on his own terms. Because if he hadn't made Dressed to Kill, they wouldn't have let him. They wouldn't have given him the freedom to make Blowout the way he wanted to. And even he says the financiers of Blowout didn't see the movie until it was finished, and so they had no weigh in on whether he could use that ending or not.
Yes.
He just said, "Here's the movie," and they were stuck with it, and they were absolutely mortified and hated it. But the ending is what makes Blowout. It is. You cannot have that movie and not have that ending. His instincts are absolutely 1,000% on the money. She had to die, and he had to use the scream. And if you change that ending, as many studios would make you today, as Harvey Weinstein would have made you today, because he would test the shit out of it and people would hate the movie, you kill the movie. And De Palma should thank his lucky stars that he had occasions to deliver the movie the way he wanted. And that is the final form of his movie, including Scarface. Because by the time he's Scarface, and I don't know if it probably would Blowout too, he's a Final Cut director. So no matter how many skirmishes he had with the ratings board on Scarface, he ultimately had the decision. It was his decision to make about going with an X rating if he felt like he had to protect the movie and accept the X rating, and he failed against challenging the ratings board, which is what happened. He went up against them and he won, but that was after they put him through 3 separate cuts and gave it an X each time. And so finally he said to his producer, who was very sympathetic to him, although the studio certainly didn't want to release an X-rated film, and De Palma himself didn't want to release an X-rated film because it's commercial death. But he said, if I'm going to go to a ratings appeal board, because they now were going to appeal the X instead of just making modifications to the film, I'm going to appeal it on the first version, the original version, with everything I wanted this movie to be. And the movie gods decided in his favor that day, and they won that appeal. So the version of Scarface that we saw in theaters that exists today is De Palma's original cut that he wanted to do the movie. But if De Palma did not have final cut on Scarface, it would have been re-released like about 10 years ago with a rap soundtrack.
Yes.
Because Scarface got hugely embraced by the rap industry to the point like it's their national anthem as a movie.
Yeah, because they see Tony as their mascot.
Yeah. And the lifestyle, I don't know so much about the killing, but the machismo of it and the money and the coke and the glitz of it.
And of course they ignore the satirical aspects.
Yeah. But De Palma, and thankfully he had final cut on it because Giorgio Moroder's score is phenomenal.
It is.
Scarface. I love it. For many years it was unavailable, but La La Land brought out a CD of it because when they released the LP to Scarface, there was only 2 of Giorgio Moroder's score tracks on it, and they were re-recordings. They weren't actually tracks that you were even used in that way in the movie. They were just embellishments of it. So the actual score didn't get released until, I want to say, like 5 years ago. So about Blowout, because I think we've kind of transitioned to Scarface a bit, but just quickly about Blowout, I feel Blowout is like also shares like, it could be like a first cousin of Body Double, because both stories feature actors and technicians working in the B exploitation end of the business.
Yes.
And then Body Double veers into the porn industry. But it's interesting how De Palma is fascinated with people who are mired in the lower levels of the business making these schlocky movies.
Yes. And I also think that he sees what they do as liberating in some ways, at least for the voyeur. One can live vicariously through their exploits. I
But
think that's a big
I
component.
also think he thinks he's not of them because he isn't. He's making these quality, well
No, that's what I
budgeted
mean.
movies.
Yeah. But I mean those sleazier productions, the cheaper ones, they have a certain level of freedom in certain areas that the more so-called elevated films don't have. So it's interesting.
Oh,
Um,
he's certainly drawn to the sleaze of it all. I mean, De Palma may gloss things
well, he's
up.
drawn to it, but he's also not just sometimes repulsed by it. He knows better, so to speak, and then has to
Well, he knows how to dress
punish
his
himself and the audience
he
for
knows how to
liking
dress
certain things.
he knows how to dress his sleaze up and make it glossy.
Yes.
And I remember
But
when he
he's
came
also
to
a moralist. That's the funny thing, just like Hitchcock. They're both moralists, but they're titillated by certain taboo things. But
yeah,
then they often
and Paul
publish,
Schrader, by the way.
yes, and then they often punish both themselves, their characters, and the audience
Yeah,
for being titillated by things that maybe they shouldn't be titillated by. They're fascinated by the whole process that I've just described and all the contradictions that come with all of it.
that is definitely an aspect that's in De Palma's work. And if you look at it, I think you nailed it with that. But I will say that I remember when De Palma came to the editing room and he had this bizarre comment at the end of the movie. He said, he was talking about Vera Farmiga's character and the way she dressed in Running Scared, which is like, we're playing the mob wife, and I think it was Vera's idea, but I liked it too, that she have a sort of G-string sticking out the back of her pants. And De Palma had some comment like, "I would never let my woman look like that on screen," and I thought that was like, okay, yeah, your women are really well put together, Brian. I mean, you definitely have put them in like well, besides from being very naked, you've definitely put them in like lingerie, like Nancy Allen's seduction of Michael Caine at the end of Dress to Kill. And I it's just one other thing about Dress to Kill, that when she's in the scene in the office and she's trying to seduce Michael Caine, they dubbed one of her lines from the R version to the unrated version. I think the original version had her saying something like, he goes, "How do you know I want to have sex with you or want to take off my clothes and be with you?" And she goes, "Because of the size of the cock in your pants." And then in the R-rated version, she goes, "The bulge in your pants." And then it's weird because something like that later happened with Body Double. Because when I saw Body Double, I saw the UK cut of it. Body Double was banned in South Africa. So I originally
Were
saw
there
it
any
by
movies that weren't banned in South
not a lot of good movies.
Africa? It seems like, why don't you just make a list of the ones that weren't banned and then
Yeah,
we'll have a shorter
that
time.
explains
Yeah.
my sad film deprived life. I've
Yeah, there
spent
you go.
my whole life catching up on what I couldn't see,
Were
and
any movies banned?
it wasn't just banned movies. They didn't release a lot of cultured movies. There were no foreign movies really, or none of like the enormity of these great foreign movies that existed out
What
there.
would
I
you
wasn't
say was the most absurd candidate for being banned that you ever came across? Like, was there some innocuous movie that they banned anyway?
There were a few of them. Well, what would happen? They would release a movie, and it would release for like 1 week, and then some stupid ultra religious conservative person would write a complaint to the government or the censorship board saying, "How could you release this movie?" And then they'd pull it and they'd ban it. So they did that with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Um,
Yeah, but think of a movie that wasn't overtly transgressive. Was there
that
anything
they
that they
uh,
banned that you thought was an outrageous call on their part? I mean, I
I'm
think
sh-
banning movies is an outrageous activity to
no, I
begin with.
know they definitely did that with. I mean, I can give you an idea of movies they banned. I mean, they cut a lot from everything. So up until maybe up to the release, so the end of apartheid, you couldn't say Jesus Christ in a movie. You couldn't say God, I don't think, in a way where you weren't, if it wasn't a biblical film or something like that.
Wow.
You couldn't say God damn. You couldn't. I mean, there were just stupid things that they did. The Life of Brian, the Monty Python film, was banned outright. That was considered like a really taboo movie to have, even though, I mean, it's such a funny satirical movie, but they don't get that. I'm trying to think of. I think the most absurd version of what they did was not that they banned it, but as we mentioned in the James Bond podcast, how they cut Live and Let Die of that whole multiracial storyline.
Yes.
Um, I will come up with examples at some point of movies that were banned where you would be like,
Yeah, we should
what?
do an episode that's only on that, the most absurd movies that were, I mean, the most absurd decisions that the South African government ever made when it came to banning
Probably
movies.
not even the South African government, just fucking around the
Yeah, we could do
world
that
with
too.
their
Yeah.
stupid prejudices. But getting back to Body Double, when I saw it, the sequence where Holly Body, played by Melanie Griffith, is sitting with Craig Wazan, Jake, and she's giving him the conditions of what she won't and will do in a porn movie. They cut like half of that dialogue, and this was because I had seen it on the screen in Sun City, which is that I talked to that before, that casino resort that was about 2 hours or whatever outside of Johannesburg, considered to be in its own independent black homeland, but really just an excuse, like a reservation in the US to go gamble and watch banned and uncensored movies. And I saw it there, and I believe it the lines were cut there too. But in the UK version, she doesn't say, "And I won't do any fisting, and I don't like to come on my face." And all those lines were cut. So when I finally watched it again in America, and it was the full version of it, I was quite shocked that there was more dialogue there that hadn't been in the movie, and
Yes.
it reminded me also of the substitutions done in Dress to Kill to get them the R rating. So De Palma has not only just dealt with them having to cut his movies visually, it's extended to the dialogue as well. His dialogue can get pretty raunchy.
For sure. I mean, that's actually what makes, I think, his movies more lurid or sensationalistic than movies that are even more pornographic than some of his. Um, because it's the ideas behind what he's saying, or even sometimes the words themselves outright, that are darker than what you would see in something that is more sexually explicit, but doesn't necessarily have dark connotations or thematic content.
You're right. He's a very subversive filmmaker, and
He is.
he knows it. And I think as much as he complains about the ratings board and the backlash to some of the violence and or the sexual violence in his films, or the fetishism of violence of razor blades cutting into women and or naked women, or as in Body Double, the drill sequence, which we can talk about when we get there. I think he likes the provocation of engaging with his critics and protest groups, and I think he likes that he's the enfant terrible of American film.
Yes.
So that, I mean, that's his brand. That's what I talk about with these four movies. He pretty much solidified his brand as a dangerous filmmaker, as somebody who's a completely R-rated filmmaker. But when you go see a De Palma movie, you're going to see eroticism, you're going to see a lot of violence, you're going to see dazzling cinematic accomplishment in the way he executes the film.
Yeah,
And
his
it's this,
aesthetic flourishes are quite extraordinary.
yeah, and his satirical outlook on the
Yes?
storytelling he's telling, because he's fully aware that his movies are going to provoke. And by the time he's doing Body Double, he's doubling down on everything. In fact, he went into Body Double thinking he was going to cast porn star Annette Pavan in the Melanie Griffith role, I believe.
Are we
But
going to
really,
discuss Scarface in depth?
yeah, no, we gotta, no, we're getting there. I'm just getting off
Oh,
track.
okay. No, I'm just making sure.
But
Yeah.
no, we're gonna do Scarface, and let's do it. Let's get to Scarface. Scarface, I having just watched it again for could be the 50th time, just gets better and better for me. And not necessarily in the direction you might think. Of course, it's virtuoso filmmaking and directing. But what really slams home for me watching it each consecutive time is how fucking well it's acted.
Yes.
Scarface, I think, has the best acting of any De Palma film. I think Pacino, along with Carlito's Way, but in terms of everybody delivering,
I would
Scarface,
add Carrie and the Untouchables also.
I think they're great. I mean, there's no De Palma movie that I love that I think has got a weak performance. Maybe I think Craig wasn't, however you pronounce his name. I think he's a little miscast in Body Double for me, but the movie still works as a pulpy entertainment. But Scarface is powerhouse acting, starting with Pacino, and then you got Michelle Pfeiffer and Stephen Bauer and
Stephen Bauer is great in this movie.
Yeah, Robert Loggia is
He's also great. And he's
fantastic.
got some Yiddish words to play around with.
And he's wearing the chai, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's great.
um, but there are so many, and of course he's working with Oliver Stone's fucking phenomenal script. And I should say this is an interesting
Which is
thing
also
about
based on another phenomenal script, the original by Ben Hecht.
and
And Ben Hecht's brilliant ideas, by the way, are in this remake. Many of the set pieces in this movie are, or at least they have equivalent or corresponding moments in the 1932 original.
you know what's interesting is they're not credited in the screenplay, and I don't know whether how that came about because clearly this is based on their screenplay. But De Palma or the producers or all of us, whoever dedicates the movie to Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht at the end of the movie. It's the
Yeah, I
first
know.
thing that comes on the movie. So I'm kind of curious as to is usually if you've got a dedication like that, it's because the WGA didn't want to sign credit for some reason. Something happened there.
Well,
But
I
I'm
do
glad.
know that Universal bought the rights to the original because Universal didn't make the original.
But it's
And
not
then,
Universal's. It's never the studio or ultimately the producer's decision
yeah, I don't know
on
exactly
who
how they got
gets
away with
credits.
removing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know how that happened, but I know that Universal got to be the studio behind this movie because they own the rights to the original. That was a component.
right. What's interesting about the backstory of this film is the original director was supposed to be Sidney Lumet, and Sidney Lumet, I think, had the idea to set it in Make Tony Montana
That's right. And by the way, his
Cuban
long-term
exile.
yeah, and his frequent collaborator Martin Bregman produced this film. He also produced
Right.
movies like Serpico
But what
and
makes it
Dog
interesting?
Afternoon.
What makes it interesting is De Palma was supposed to direct the movie that Sidney Lumet ended up directing, Prince of the City, and De Palma felt like Sidney Lumet stole the movie from him. He was very bitter about it. He even said as much in the, I think it was in the documentary, De Palma. So when Sidney Lumet got replaced on Scarface, I think that he had creative differences with Pacino. and they brought De Palma in. It gave De Palma enormous satisfaction that he got to take one from Lumet, and he actually went in Blowout. The backstory of Travolta being a guy who wires cops going into corruption setups and things like that was De Palma's sort of I guess tip of the hat to what he would have done with Prince of the City. It was that was very purposely done because of all the research that he had done on Prince of the City. Apparently, he worked over a year on Prince of the City, and I think at some point, I don't know what enabled them to say, okay, we're going to replace you with Sidney Lumet, but he didn't take that well. So there was definitely a sense of satisfaction that he got Scarface over Sidney Lumet. I'll say this about Scarface, without doubt, the most operatic De Palma movie. It's a full-scale immigrant story gone wrong opera. And
it creates a new aesthetic, which is this operatic sleaze or this expressionistic sleaziness. I don't think there's a better movie in that regard ever made. I think this is like the ultimate example of how to turn sleaze and corruption into poetry. Yeah, there isn't one that I prefer in that regard.
he's doing this beautiful, like Miami kind of pastel shaded cinematography, this sort of acrylic tropical look. I think John Alonzo was the cinematographer, the guy. Was that the cinematographer of
Yes.
Chinatown?
Yeah.
And he's do you remember the production designer? Is something he uses on Skullface, Scoffiati or something? He's using this great Italian production designer who brings the opulence and the lushness and the over the top. It's almost like,
Well, that's why I use the term expressionistic
well, Tony
because
Montana's like interior design is definitely kind of like a combination of Donald Trump and rap. Like
yeah,
it's
the
like
gaudiness of it.
it's the gaudiness and the flaunting of wealth. It's new money. It's not understanding the subtlety of how
Correct.
really rich people sort of play down the money.
That's
It's
right.
like, I've got the money, bring in the gold, bring in like the
Yeah.
gold toilets and the faucets and but it's really interesting and it's really well thought out production design because Tony's mansion, when he finally owns his mansion, the walls are what color? They're painted blood. They're red. They're
Yes.
the mansion. It's like saying the mansion was earned in blood and vacated in blood by the end. I think the visual palette of the movie is so well thought out, and he's
And I
shooting
also think
light.
it's one of the most moral gangster movies ever made because, like the original Scarface, like Little Caesar, like Preetzi's Honor, like The Untouchables, which De Palma also made, this is a movie that makes it clear that De Palma does not endorse the behavior of the gangsters. He's not enamored of them. He satirizes their larger than life megalomaniacal tendencies. And I also think it's one of the most honest gangster films ever made. Now, of course, part of that honesty comes from Ben Hecht's original screenplay, but also
And
comes from
Oliver
Oliver
Stone.
Stone's yes, I was just going to say that. Comes
I
from
think
Oliver
this
Stone's contributions.
the movie definitely reflects De Palma's aesthetic. And De Palma tells the funny story how Oliver Stone was on the set in the beginning, and he had only directed one movie at that time, the low budget The Hand. It wasn't a successful movie, but he kept trying to talk. He didn't agree with what De Palma was doing as a director, and he kept talking to the actors about performance. And De Palma said, I had to throw him off the set. You got the sense that he liked Oliver Stone, but he felt like, "No, wait a minute, dude, this is my movie. You don't get to talk to the actors and second guess me." Um, but it feels very much like an Oliver Stone
Oh, for
movie.
sure. The frenzied
The
nature of it.
and the excess and
Yes.
and De Palma talks about
Well,
Oliver
here you
Stone.
have two great larger than life filmmakers collaborating.
Yeah, and De Palma talks about Oliver Stone put his life on the line. He went down to South America and talked to these drug dealers and put himself in some very hairy situations to get, some of this detail that's in the movie. And of course, the movie itself, the Cuban community did not like that De Palma was shooting this movie about a Cuban gangster in Miami, and they eventually chased the movie out of Miami. And I think they had to finish shooting it in LA.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous. Because the movie's in part based on historical events. I mean, not the exact characters, but I mean, there was plenty of criminal activity that was imported from Cuba.
You know, and
So
yeah, and the thing about Scarface is, out of all De Palma's movies, it's got the rap of being the most violent movie, and yet outside of the chainsaw sequence, and this Scarface is almost a 3 hour movie. I think it's 2 hours and 50 minutes or something in that vein. The violence is the chainsaw sequence. There's that murder of the guy that escaped Cuba that had tortured people in
it's
prison or something
basically
like
an
that.
assassination, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a particularly violent scene as far as what goes on
No, the
later.
chainsaw
But
scene is the most
the
disturbing and
chainsaw
violent
scene,
scene in the film, I think.
and De Palma said that was taken from real research. They really did use chainsaws on their rivals in the business.
And
This
it's very
particular
suspenseful, that scene leading up to the actual
And
chainsaw
again,
moment.
in the chainsaw sequence, it's all implied. You don't actually see the chainsaw cutting into anybody. You see the
No,
blood splatter.
yeah, that's right.
And that caused De Palma endless problems with the ratings board. But what I was going to say is, you have the chainsaw sequence. It isn't until the very, very end of the movie where the South American gangster, I forget his name, Sosa, I don't know what I
Yeah.
forget, where his assassins assault Tony's compound, and they start killing everybody, and then Pacino starts fighting back. Isn't until there where the movie gets super bloody and super violent.
Yeah, and in some
The
ways, though,
movie
of course,
is
that
more
whole sequence
violent.
is not realistic, right? It's poetic, it's larger than life. It's basically an homage to the ending of the original Scarface. Paul
But I
Muni's
don't even think,
performance.
like we talked about the murders in Dress to Kill. I don't think that sequence is unrealistic. I think when you grab a machine gun, a powerful machine gun like that, and you mow people down, it feels really realistic and visceral to me. But in a cinematic
Well, one of
way.
the things that I find not realistic about it, but again, I'm complimenting the fact that it's hyper real or larger than life, is when Tony himself gets hit, I don't know how
Right.
many times. That
But
isn't realistic, at least
no,
in
it's
my
not
eyes.
realistic. It's not realistic. It's also suggesting he's had so much fucking coke in his body that he can't feel the fact that he's
Yeah,
been shot.
and that's why I
So,
said this is an expressionistic film because the
yes,
emotions of the
especially in that
characters are
sequence.
outwardly or they're externalized. That's the way to put it.
Yeah, he's so fucking high in that moment that he and paranoid and believing he's superhuman in that moment that he refuses to accept that he's dead already. And I love that. I
So do
love
I.
that.
But the thing is,
Uh,
you see, if you have a literal mind, you may not like that sequence or the whole film for that matter, or many of these De Palma movies, which is interesting because when I speak to people who aren't necessarily cinephiles and they just are casual viewers, they tend to prefer De Palma movies that are not written by him because I think that those movies, including Scarface, even though I've just finished saying that it is larger than life in many ways, it's still nonetheless more grounded in reality than, let's say, Blowout or Dress to Kill.
yes,
The
absolutely.
Hitchcock, the overt Hitchcock homages, and by the way, all of his movies are Hitchcockian in their formalism, but I'm talking about the overt Hitchcock homage films, the ones that three of which we've discussed in this podcast, but in this episode. But those movies are dreamier. Those movies are not
Yeah.
following literal minded logic. They're following dream logic. And then, of course, all of his movies, to a certain extent, have some elements of dream logic.
There's
Or,
definitely some of the dreaminess in Scarface, especially when he takes over the gang and he starts to achieve this enormous amount of wealth.
yes,
It definitely, you feel, and I have to marvel at this. De Palma gets he split screens into Scarface in a very unique way. He uses the surveillance monitors in Tony's mansion to create split screens. I mean, it's
Yes.
fucking genius how he's cutting from the action over the monitors, especially in the end as well. Like, and I love that. Like, his brain is always thinking in like, how can I divide up the screen into these quadrants and show all this activity here and then change to here and come back to here. Again, Scarface is just amazingly cinematic. And it's the Moroder score is wonderful too. And how he like I mean, I know
Well, he's the
Moroder
poet
was,
laureate of electronic music, I think. I think he's the
yeah,
most
I mean,
poetic of all electronic
his
based
score,
film
nobody can
composers.
come close to electronic scoring than Moroder. And he had that period in the late 70s into
The Midnight
uh
Express, for example.
yeah, Midnight Express, American Gigolo, Cat People.
Top Gun,
Yeah,
to a certain
no, he
extent.
didn't do Top Gun. There was
No, but but his influence is all over it. And the
oh yeah,
song, he did work on the song. So his Wagnerian sensibility is definitely in the score and the title song of
even
Top Gun.
even today, I can put on Moroder scores and I just love playing them. There are
Yes.
even because and I can't say that about that many electronic scores that were trendy in the moment because Moroder again uses real themes
That's right.
and beautiful harmonics and real like earworms. I mean, the Midnight Express score, and didn't he win an Oscar for that? I think he won an
He
Oscar for that
did.
score.
And it's interesting because Bernard Herrmann in Sisters in particular was experimenting with electronic devices to give the soundscape a unique flavor. And so Brian De Palma was always open to that possibility. So it's just very interesting that when he got around to making Scarface, De Palma, really went all out on the use of electronic
And
music.
the opening theme to Scarface, where you're seeing the news footage of the
Yeah.
Mariel boat lift, and then the
So
Moroder theme comes in.
exuberant.
It is, especially when the
You can
percussion
dance to
just
it.
well, it's just a fucking great theme,
Oh,
and
and all the songs in the clubs,
yeah, yeah,
the club sequences, very, very
and the
appropriate.
very touching love theme, the theme for the sister,
Yeah, it's great.
who's Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, is wonderful in the role.
She is.
Just like everybody, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Let's not ignore Michelle Pfeiffer because I think she had only really done Grease 2 before this movie. And she comes onto this movie and she fucking kills it. And you talk about the Moroder theme when she comes down in the elevator in
Yeah,
Robert
that's
Loggia's
dreamy.
apartment and Tony sees her for the first time. Just that little piece of scoring is so good. It's so like
And what a great set that is. I assume, is it
yeah.
a set? I'm not sure if that's a set or not, but
I
it's
don't know though. I don't
very
know
well
that.
designed. Whoever designed it, they did
Yeah.
a good job.
Yeah, I mean they
Um,
spared no money on Scarface. I
yeah.
mean De Palma shot for months and months on that movie.
Oh, and another
But
performance is Harris Yulin's performance as the
oh
corrupt
yeah,
cop. What a great
yeah,
performance.
great performance and a Jewish cop, right?
Yeah, there you go. And
Um,
and that's a Jewish actor. So it's a Jewish actor playing a Jewish character. There you go.
I love Harris Yulin, and I know I might forget it, so I'm going to mention it now. The other great cop that he uses in Body Double is Guy Boyd, who
Yes.
has the most quintessential American voice to me. That like when he says, "You're the one who got it killed, Scully," it's I love watching that character. Like De Palma just knew how to find these guys too, but. Just getting back to Scarface, Michelle Pfeiffer, one of the amazing things she's doing is she's starving herself, literally, during the making of this movie because she's supposed to be a cocaine addict and she's not eating. And she had calibrated based on the shooting schedule they started with that she's going to be at her thinnest at a certain point, but they kept expanding the shooting schedule and the shooting schedule, and
Yeah.
she's like wasting away. So she was kind of living through hell to play that character,
Yes.
uh, which I thought talk about being dedicated to your craft. And of course, she's stunningly beautiful. And the
She is.
scene, my favorite scene in Scarface, and it's purely a performance scene, is the scene in the restaurant where it's the last time you see Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie, and she's had enough of Tony, and they just go at each other like cats and dogs.
Yeah, it's a great
And
scene.
it's a great scene. And when he says, "Your womb is so barren," and she's like, "Oh, fuck you." And then as he's leaving, he has I'm the last bad guy, or like, say goodnight to the bad guy. That's Oliver Stone at his finest.
Yeah, definitely. And also, Stephen Bauer, I think his performance is fantastic. And it's a unique performance in that it combines so many different qualities that we usually don't see in a gangster character, especially someone who's basically a henchman of sorts.
Yeah.
He's boorish, but he's also at times
He's like a
seductive
he's like
and
a but he's like a
charismatic.
puppy. He's like a
Yeah.
puppy to Tony. He's like he wants Tony's affirmation all the time, and clearly he's not the brightest bulb in the bunch.
No. But
And
sometimes
there's
but the funny thing is sometimes he actually has a big heart. And
oh,
then sometimes he's
he
really
has a
cruel
big
and sometimes
heart.
he's very crude.
He has a
Yeah.
big heart for a sociopath, right? Because don't
Yeah.
forget, he's the one who executes Logia.
That's right.
Uh, and I love that scene where, I mean, talk about a great scene where Tony's established that Frank, the Lojo character, is the one who like tried to kill him at the club, and they've gone back to Frank's headquarters, and Tony's with the phone call, Tony's established that Frank betrayed him, and then Frank's down on his knees, please, Tony, don't kill me, I'll give you $10 million, and then Tony goes, I'm not gonna kill you, and Frank goes, oh, thank God, he goes, Manola, shoot this prick. And
Yeah.
then Manola has
There's a
no
somewhat
compunction.
similar scene in the original, by the way. It is different enough in this film, but it's interesting. It would be a very nice or fascinating, I should say, double feature to watch the original and the remake side by side.
Yeah, and I actually I have a Blu-ray that has them both in the same not, on two different discs, but it came as part of the same package.
Oh,
So
cool.
I saw the original a while ago, so I'm not as familiar with it as De Palma's. But what I wanted to say about the execution of Robert Logia's character, Tony is doing that specifically because he always felt Logia never got his hands dirty
That's right.
killing anyone himself. So he didn't even think. So he wanted to make the point: I'm not going to get my hands dirty killing you.
Yeah.
But he has no
Or maybe he's
problem.
just toying with him. Just well, he is toying with him either way, but I mean,
But he has no problem killing the Harris Yulin character. Again, another one of the great Oliver Stone lines where he goes, "You can't do this to me. I'm a cop." And Tony
yeah,
goes, "Whoever said you was one?"
yeah. And I love how defiant though. Once he realizes that he's
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
live, how he just tells him to, he says "fuck you," right? So,
And
that's a
Tony
great
had to
moment too.
admire that for sure.
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, his death, the cop's death, is basically precursor to Tony's death, right? Because he also goes out basically defiant,
Yeah,
right? So there you go.
except the cop Bernstein wasn't coked up
No,
like a
that's true.
maniac.
He's a much more sober fellow. But the other thing that I love about this film is that it's a great satire on ex the excesses of the 1980s and the Reaganite culture, where people just will make money doing anything and everything, right? It's an amoral pursuit. Not that it ever has been anything else in certain ways, but I'm just saying the 80s have a certain reputation in this regard. And it's interesting that the film came out the same year as Risky Business. They have many thematic similarities,
Yeah.
and they also have aesthetic similarities because they both have electronic music that is very poetic, and they also have a sleazy expressionism. Uh, so they're a very interesting pair, those two. Um,
What I want to say about Scarface is that out of all the movies De Palma directed, and this might be a singular movie in itself out of all movies made, this movie had the most incredible staying power in the culture. Scarface was, I think it did okay financially when it came out. It wasn't like a blockbuster or anything, but it was pounced on by the critics. They all tore it apart. And as beautifully directed as we both acknowledge Scarface is, it's still got a fucking golden raspberry nomination for De
Yeah,
Palma's
that annoys
directing.
me.
I mean, history rewrites a lot of these creative wrongs, and De Palma is the last guy laughing about it, or not laughing about it, because he probably didn't appreciate that or having that black mark on his career. But can you think of a more egregious fucking golden raspberry nomination? The whole idea of nominating the worst movies, I think, is a shitty concept in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's very
It's
tacky.
dumb, toxic negativity for kicks. It's again, it's like everything this fucking culture has become. Let's celebrate the negative. And a lot of those movies have lived beyond what these stupid awards calling them out.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
also very interesting because standards change over time. Obviously, as individuals, we all have our own subjective mindset, and if we're cinephiles, we even have our own subjective pantheon of greatness, or the opposite. But the thing is, I just find it interesting that movies that were considered horrible by, let's say, the voters. I don't actually know how their voting system works, the Golden Raspberries, but whoever's running that organization, I just find that they were excessively harsh in their judgments. But again, it's all subjective. But like for example, even a movie like Wild Wild West, I don't think is as horrible as they made it out to be. I think what ends up happening is there's a lot of groupthink, and
yeah. Well,
the groupthink
pylon,
gets the yeah,
it's called pylon criticism, where the first
yeah.
critics out of the gate destroy something, and everyone else goes, "Well, it must be shitty." And if I write that I liked it, I'm going to be embarrassed. So let me give it a negative review, unless it's by a director that we feel is untouchable, or maybe somebody doesn't want to pile on a female director because they want to be supportive of having more women directors. But I just want to give a bit. Scarface on IMDb is rated the number 102 top rated movie. So it's in the pantheon of the movies that have penetrated the culture, because you don't get into the top 100, let's call it that, without the movie having significant impact in terms of it being a favorite movie of people globally. And it's been rated not just by people who have seen it, but bother to come on IMDb and say, I think this movie is worth a 9 or 10 or 8
Yes.
or whatever. It's been rated a million times. Now,
Maybe a lot
that's,
of gangsters did the voting. No, I'm
I'm
joking.
sure. I mean, look, it has got a massive, massive following for sure in the black culture, in the rap culture,
Yeah, what would
among
hip hop
cinephiles
culture be
like
without
myself.
that movie?
And it is a great fucking movie. It is a
It is.
great piece of cinema. It is great performances, great scoring, great cinematography, great editing, a great screenplay by Oliver Stone. There, it's not, some people talk about Scarface and it's like, oh yeah, Scarface, such a violent movie. I'll tell you a funny
Oh,
story
but
about it.
John Wick movies aren't, right? See, again, I don't understand that. Maybe it has something to do with just the fact that we live in a
But
different
when people
time
get
now, but
shot in Scarface, you understand why they die, because they have been blown
no, of
apart.
course, but I know, but
The
I'm just
only,
saying
yeah, the only like
I'm critiquing
John,
the critics here. I'm saying I don't
yeah,
understand why the John Wick movies are critically acclaimed if you look at their ratings, let's say.
yeah, I
Um,
don't get it.
like it doesn't
But
make sense to me that but like I said, maybe it's
it's the
relative. Maybe
superhero movies, and we're in this period where superheroes mean everything, because clearly Keanu Reeves' John Wick character is not, he doesn't function by human standards, by standards of gravity, and barely takes a punch. But when he does, it would have put any guy out. But John Wick, John Wick gets by and is so popular because people just want to say it's a video game, and it's for video game culture. And it's for people who play these video games where violence means nothing to them. There's no consequences to the violence. There's absolutely zero consequences in John Wick violence. In Scarface, it's a very different story. Tony watches one of his best friends from
no, so
Cuba
it's a
get
morality
chainsawed,
play. This the well, I would actually say almost every, if not every, Brian De
and
Palma movie is a
and the
morality play.
violence before Tony even succumbs to it and gets shot in the back himself and in the front turns on Tony, because he ends up killing Manola in this fit of like what is it, sexual jealousy over his sister, and that like he doesn't think any man should have.
Yeah, it's an incestuous.
There's definitely that incestuous theme with him and his sister
Yeah,
flowing
it could
through
come
it.
straight out of a Greek tragedy.
And like he can't even control his impulses when he kills Manola, not even realizing that they had gotten married.
That's right.
And once I contend that once Tony shoots Manola, his life is over. He can never come back from that. I
That's
think
right.
even at that point, Tony wants to die.
But also,
Tony is
don't
the,
forget, he had the hardship of being in bed with this woman and talk about nudity that you probably wouldn't see today as freely as it's depicted here. And he's called out of action, so to speak, so that he can go and work for Tony, right? What a disappointment for him.
yeah.
So,
But then, but is that before he meets
no,
the
that's when he
sister
gets called.
afterwards,
That's
right?
when he gets called to kill or to help him kill Frank.
Right, exactly. Right.
But
Yeah.
I was just making a silly joke.
But the ending, the scene where he kills Manola is crushing scene. It's De Palma knows how to deliver
True.
these really devastating, harrowing scenes, like
Well, the Untouchables has a few of
like the
them.
murder of the Vietnamese woman in Casualties of War, which
Yes,
is probably De Palma's most harrowing movie from beginning to end in terms of just this sense of doom and despair and ugliness, and yet cinematically packaged like he always does. But in Scarface, we feel the pain of this killing because we also like the chemistry between Manola and his sister.
that's right.
And once Tony does that, because we're on Tony's side up until that point, because remember, just before that, Tony does draw the line on his morality somewhere. He's not going to kill women and children knowingly. So he could have, Tony's life could have been very different if Tony allowed that guy to blow up the politician in the car they were
That's
following with the
right.
bomb underneath it. If Tony had picked, there's a definite morality that Stone and Brian De Palma underline in Tony's character, where he's a killer, but Tony himself said it. I never killed anyone who didn't have it coming to them.
That's right.
And in that moment, he just rejects the unfairness of it, and he ends up killing the guy who was going to hit the switch, and he destroys his life in that moment. And it goes from bad to worse then, because when he thought, oh, this is terrible, they're coming for me, he gets home and he gets the call to go. His sister's fucking around with some dude in Coconut Grove in this big mansion. And when he turns up there, he's so enraged that he can't even control his impulses. And in that very moment, you might as well end the movie there. You could theoretically end the movie there because that is the end of Tony.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
having the big showdown at his mansion is just an operatic way of Tony saying goodbye to us. And it's a crazy scene. And I don't know
It
if you
is.
know some of the trivia of that scene, because it's pretty commonly known that when Al Pacino was shooting that big grenade firing machine gun, say hello to my little friend, at one point he grabbed the barrel, which was white hot from having fired all these blanks, and it literally melted his hand and stuck to his hand, and he had to go to the hospital, and he was out of commission for 2 weeks. But De Palma was there with his crew. They couldn't shoot at Pacino, so they shot everything else that didn't involve Pacino, all this point of view of Pacino firing. So he had 2 weeks to just kill people.
Yeah.
And even Steven Spielberg came down to the set, and I think it was during
Yeah,
that
I've seen
sequence.
pictures of him on the set.
Yeah, and he shot a bunch of. I think De Palma was shooting with like 3 cameras, 4 cameras, and that sequence is incredibly well covered,
It
and
is.
but with amazing like squibbing of these guys and stunt work. I mean, you really feel like the fucking machine gun shredding them. And today, all that blood would be that fucking digital bullshit. It would look fake. It would look like John Wick. John Wick does not have a single real bullet shot, a bullet impact. Scarface sells it, man. You feel like the vibrations.
Definitely.
And
Well,
of
in
course,
general, this is a very tactile movie. You feel the sweat on people's bodies. You feel
yeah.
uh the blood trickling down people's bodies and onto objects. It's just, and I can go on and on about that. I mean, even just at the beginning of, or near the beginning of the movie, when Tony and his friend are working menial jobs. Look at how dirty they are. Like they're
Yeah.
soaked in sweat. They're filthy. Um, you don't see that anymore in
And it's
movies.
interesting how you go from that to Tony in his mansion, in his bathroom, which is bigger than that entire restaurant he was working in the bubble bath. And now
That's
he's
right.
clean. He's clean,
That's
and
right.
but his life is on a downward trajectory because he can't maintain the marriage to the dream girl he has. He's become even more crude and like oafish, and he's getting high on his own supply, and he he himself can't see the end is near. And it's interesting his relationship with Manola, because even though he blows up at him about it at one point, it's so minimized that all Tony's legal problems stem from Manola getting him into that deal that ends up being a FBI sting operation or whatever, or I don't know if it was FBI or the DEA or whatever.
Yeah, it's a sting operation though.
Right. And you would think Tony would just fucking kill Manola because of that. But it only sort of comes up one time where he yells at him about it. So I think we both love Scarface.
Definitely. I mean, it's one of my four favorite Brian De Palma movies. This is just me personally, and I like
Yeah,
so many of them.
I would
Uh,
say it's my third favorite De Palma movie. I like Carlito's Way because I love the character, I love the tension, I love the predicament of Carlito, and De Palma's like Grand Central Station scene, that the whole train.
Great set piece.
It's just such an incredible set piece. It's just virtuoso. As De Palma himself said, I think when he was watching it at Berlin or something, he said, "I don't think I can make a better movie," and I agree with him. I think he's it's not as flashy as Scarface or some of the other films, but he's most accomplished, and I think his camera work is perfect, and the mood. And Patrick Doyle, another great composer, he's used as a terrific score for Carlito's Way. And it's just one last thing about Scarface. I have an Al Pacino Scarface action figure that talks,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, and you press a little button in the back, and it gives you some of the classic Scarface lines. But when they brought this action figure out, there was supposed to be a R-rated version, and that's the one I thought I was buying. But I guess I didn't. So there was one that also used all the profanity. But this one says "Hello to my little friend," and first you got to get
That's cute.
first you've got to get the money, then you get the power, then you get the woman. All those, and there's so many fucking quotable
You can make
Scarface
your own
lines.
version of the movie using the action figure.
And then I don't know where I got it or where I found it. It's a key ring that does a similar thing. When you press a button, it quotes Scarface dialogue. So,
Well, that's
and I
cool.
actually have another De Palma action figure. You wouldn't think that in the world of Brian De Palma there would be action figures, but I have the Phantom of the Paradise too,
Oh, nice.
which is an amazing action figure. Let's go to Body Double now. So Body Double, of course, was banned in South Africa. We're back here
Wait,
again. And of course,
was Scarface banned?
it was not, but it was heavily censored.
Oh, okay.
But I did see it on a pirated video cassette, so I saw the uncut version right from the start, and I loved it. And I don't think I ever subjected myself to the censored South African version, because I think South Africa, when they released Scarface, cut out like every fuck. So that's like making a incision into the film, what, every 10, 15 seconds
Well,
in
that's how I
Scarface?
saw Goodfellas for the first time. It was on television, um, at what was it? Like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so almost every other word was some ridiculous substitute for an actual
Friggin'. It
profane
was
word.
friggin'. It was friggin' this and friggin' that.
Yeah, ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. What was interesting was when they censored movies in South Africa, they had the uncut prints, but they physically cut the print. So let's say Scarface was screening. It's a small country, So they never had like 1,000 theater runs. And even Scarface, when it came out, I don't think they were doing those 1,000 screen runs in America yet. I think there were probably a couple of hundred. But anyway, let's say Scarface played in like 30 theaters in South Africa. Every single print would have to be physically cut. So what they would do is when they cut the word fuck out, they would cut the frames where fuck was said. But because the sound, I think, travels ahead of the picture on analog film prints, you would hear, instead of someone going to say, I'm going to kick your fucking teeth in, the movie would say, I'm going to kick your teeth in, because the fuck had been cut out of it.
Yes.
And then you would hear the word said, and then the frame would jump. Like you would have a jump cut in the image.
Oh, that's terrible.
So you could always tell when something was cut in a South African censored print, because whether it was sex, whether it was profanity, the frame would jump. Like one of the famous ones was in Cat People, when Natasha Kinski goes up the stairs to finally have sex with John Hurt's character, and she's stripping down. As soon as her blouse is about to come off, the screen just cuts and they're in bed. I mean, it's shit like that that you had to go through life.
So by the way, folks, you can see here that if you're obsessed with censoring people's movies, you're going to end up no better than the South African government. There you go. So there's your morality lesson.
Not only that, but you're going to create filmmakers who just want to do provocative films.
That's right. You're going to end up
shove it back in your face.
That's right.
If my movies are accused of being sexual and violent and sleazy, it's because of the South African Censorship Board. I put it squarely in.
We're going to have to do a Freudian analysis of your movies.
I mean, that's why I gravitated towards De Palma rather than Spielberg, because I love that De Palma was embracing the transgressive and the taboo, whereas while Spielberg's movies were hugely entertaining and completely virtuoso, I mean, I think he's the most gifted filmmaker to ever live.
He's my favorite director if I had to pick one.
And I am blown away by his filmmaking skill. Nobody can block a shot like Steven Spielberg, not even De Palma. But I am drawn to Brian De Palma's dark worldview and
Yes.
Brian De Palma's provocative storytelling, and clearly, they're good friends, De Palma and Spielberg, or they used to be. They probably still are, but they couldn't be more different filmmakers in the way they approach subject matter. I think Steven Spielberg has shown nudity maybe twice in his entire career, and it's always been in Jewish-themed movies. And the two movies I think that he's only ever had nudity in was Schindler's List and Munich, both in very serious movies. It's never playful. It's sort of dark, and I don't feel he's comfortable with it. And I always feel like he's probably, I'd rather be making Harrison Ford like climb under a truck somewhere and get the bad guy.
That's right. But the thing is, with Spielberg, I agree with everything you just said on the surface of it. But I would just say that in a roundabout way, Spielberg becomes transgressive in ways that you don't expect, or in ways that are figurative. So, for example, if you think of a movie like E.T. the Extraterrestrial, not only is it extremely subversive because the children inherit the Earth, so to speak, and they become the representatives of humanity to an alien species, but the concept itself is so weird. A different director could have turned the same setup into a horror film, right? Like a boy puts an alien monster in his closet.
Well,
maybe
wasn't the original concept? I think the original concept was supposed to be a horror film, and then Spielberg'd it.
But the thing is, I find the surrealism of the scenario in a way rarer than if it had been, let's just say, a horror film, because it takes a certain kind of genius to find a way to turn this concept into a lovable, amiable film. Just as, for example, on a micro level, if you look at, let's say, the scene in Jurassic Park with the velociraptors in the kitchen, that's surreal. That's not normal. And think of the amount of imagination it takes
But
to come up with
all of it in Spielberg's movies, all the fantasy is in service of telling stories about broken families. E.T. is that. Jurassic Park is that.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a rich you know,
And De
filled with thematic
Palma's
content.
stories are in service of getting women naked. And I say that only, and I say that only sort of in jest because he admits he loves women. He loves to photograph them. He loves to see them walk. So getting back to Body Double, he's got this walk scene where the character of Jake Craig Wasson stalks Deborah Shelton's character, who is Gloria Revel, through this mall in Beverly Hills, and it by De Palma's own admission, it might be the longest walking take in the history of film, but it just goes on, and it's really just focused on showing a beautiful woman walk and then walk into a lingerie store and try on lingerie, and then he follows her to the beach, and he follows her all over the fucking place.
He could have called this
Um,
movie Beautiful Women Walking.
it could be, and I love I I will concede this. Body Double is definitely the weakest movie on this list. It's definitely the movie that I don't think gets better with each viewing, although I admire many, many aspects out of it. But I still enjoy the shit out of watching it. I think it's, I don't even want to, what is the term? There is a certain, I don't know any other word to use, sorry, campiness to Body Double. There's there's a playful
Yeah,
quality to
that's
Body
my
Double.
dictatorial move. You can't use that word in my presence. No, I'm joking.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Uh,
censor you. No, I'm joking.
All right, I'll censor. I'll self-censor myself.
No,
But
no,
De
go
Palma
ahead.
is De Palma. I feel like De Palma is sending himself up in this movie. He's making a signature Brian De Palma movie. The concept is inspired by him him using a body double with Angie Dickinson in the shower in Dress to Kill, and
Yes.
he he not only works that into the film, but he also makes it the idea of somebody thinking they're seeing one person, but it's really another person. So a body double essentially plugged into a murder plot. It is, it's a
The movie
wacky.
doesn't look, though, to me like a Brian De Palma movie aesthetically.
Well, I think, well,
I
if
mean,
you take,
it is like obviously it is to a certain extent,
okay,
but I
I mean,
mean, relatively speaking.
there's something visually different right off the start from the other three De Palma movies we talked about. So those are all shot in 235 scope. This one is shot 185. So already
Yes,
the shape of the screen is diminished and it's closer to having like a television frame.
that's right.
Um,
Which mirrors the content of the film to some extent.
yeah, it's a very, very 80s movie. It's a
Yes.
bubblegum kind of, I mean, colorful sort of. If I had to point to any period in history that defines LA to me, it's this period. There's so many 80s and LA and colorful and leopard prints and pinks and day glow colors and gaudy fashions and like even like Melanie Griffith's porn star haircut with a short spiky haircut. There was a porn movie that got made, I think, not long after that, called The Devil in Miss Jones Part 3, and the actress Lois Ayres completely steals Body's look for that. And Jake's girlfriend is played by Reanimator's Barbara Crampton. It feels very 80s there.
Well, the
Uh,
hairstyles alone, let's just put it that way. You can identify this movie as an 80s movie just from that.
and Deborah Shelton's character, who's Gloria Revel, the woman who Jake thinks he's watching at night and becomes obsessed with, she dresses and feels very much like the way Angie Dickinson dresses.
Yes.
She has
And
that.
by the way, now you can see that Brian De Palma is like Hitchcock in a different way, right? Because he has the same women or similar women appearing
Oh
throughout
yeah.
many of his films.
Oh, he definitely has. Again, he has a type. He loves very like statuesque, well put together women, elegant looking women, classy, rich looking women, which is interesting. When the Melanie Griffith character turns up, she doesn't feel like a typical De Palma woman. She feels more feral
That's
than the
true.
kind of women you sort of associate with De Palma movies. And of course, she's the best thing about Body Double. And she only turns up in the second hour of the movie, but she steals the movie. Uh, she and I love her character, but we're jumping ahead a little bit about the story and everything. What I love about Body Double is it's set in LA, where I have lived my entire adult life. I've been here nearly 40 years. And even the apartment that Craig Wazan lives in the beginning, where he comes home and he finds Barbara Crampton's having sex with someone she's girlfriend, that apartment could have been an apartment I lived in for like 9 years. That neighborhood, I know that neighborhood so well, and those Spanish,
And in a shocking twist, it was the apartment you lived in. No, I'm joking.
not quite, but very close, very close. I used to go to the Beverly Center, and you see him at the Beverly Center. My wife also, who was born here in Beverly Hills, she actually saw because I was when Body Double was made, I was still living in South Africa, but the Tale of the Pup hot dog stand, it used to be I think it used to be there. I never ever saw it there because by the time I moved to LA, the Beverly Center didn't look like that. Um, but it goes to Barney's Beanery. That's still there today, I believe, although don't hold me to it. But it was there for a long time. If it might still be there. But the Hollywood Towers, where Jake's bartender friend allows him to sleep over that night, that's still there. The sign isn't pink though. So there's so much about Body Double. I remember I had seen Body Double on a originally at Sun City, but then I got a bootleg of it in South Africa. And so I knew all the LA locations by the time I came out to live here. So like most people would like go, oh, I'm coming to LA and I want to go and see the Griffith Observatory because I love Rebel Without a Cause. I had to go see all the Body Double locations. And it had Tower Records. It's such an LA movie using the real locations. I mean, there may be studio, there are sets for the interiors of many of those locations. And he's totally gone full Hitchcock here, whereas before he's tipping the hat, but he's all the way in on Hitchcock here, even using those rare projections when Craig wasn't is driving. And he's definitely using them aesthetically and not because he has to.
That's right. And that's what I was saying before. He often will make his films surreal because he indulges in artifice. The contrivance, forget about like narrative contrivances. I'm talking about specifically aesthetic contrivances. They create a surreal vibe, right? This is not reality as we usually see it.
No, it's way less reality than Dress to Kill and Blowout and even Scarface. It is definitely taking place in De Palma's Fantasyville.
Yes.
Where every character is a character that exists in a De Palma Hitchcockian template. And I love that he gives it. What I do love about Body Double is you're watching this movie where Jake is seduced into looking through the telescope. And by the way, that's one of the great Pino Donaggio compositions, that dancing music of the Holy Body Seduction dance, that electronic piece, which is quite different to the rest of the score. And in fact, it got reused in Ben Affleck used that track in his movie Heir, about Michael Jordan and the high tops and all that.
Yes.
But so you're watching this movie and you're getting invested in this guy's fixation, and he's really stalking her, this Gloria Revel. And, he's like a failed actor, and he feels like, he's got this savior complex. He wants to save her because he's falling into all the traps of what Greg Henry's character set up for him. And I do think that's the weakest part of Body Double, is the plotting of it is so, like, Greg Henry's plot. I forget the name of Mr. Revel or whatever his real name is. His plotting depends on a lot of like, Jake has to be here at this time and place. This has to fall in place. This has to fall in place. Jake has to make sure he sees the Greg Henry / Indian character working on the satellite dish. And then he has to be driving and following her. And
the film is indulging in contrivance on purpose.
I
think so, at least.
He's welding the script to his needs of telling a certain plot, but it's not realistic. It's not.
Of course.
It's almost like Body Double is a dream.
That's right.
And it could be interpreted as that, right? Because Jake may never have gotten out of that coffin. Jake may have said, I mean, the whole thing, remember, like after the whole movie resolves itself, he's back in the coffin.
That's right.
And he says, and the director, played by Dennis Franz, another De Palma regular from Dress to Kill and Blowout, says to him, come on, Jake, we'll pick it up tomorrow or something. And Jake goes, oh no, I know that you're going to fire me and I'm going to go through with this. So if you interpret Body Double as the entire plot is what Jake has sort of in his claustrophobic stupor sort of imagined while he's there, then those kind of unrealistic plot flourishes definitely make sense. And it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, right?
But they're
Because
also self-conscious, the contrived narrative elements. So in other words, they don't even need to, you don't need to try to justify them because they perhaps have a tongue-in-cheek element
but De Palma does
or an
want
ironic element.
but De Palma does want there to be stakes to it because
Oh yeah, but those are there anyway.
when Jake's rushing to save Gloria Revel, he wants us to feel the jeopardy and the tension, and he milks it, and the dogs,
Yeah.
and then getting into the apartment. And again, like Blowout, he does it to us again. We kind of like her. We feel she's this fragile, bruised, like angel, and she's hot, and we think we've seen her naked, and we want Jake to save her, and we think he probably will save her, but not realizing that De Palma's got a whole other direction he's going to take this film and up his sleeve, and Gloria has to die for that to happen. And so after she's dead, we go, where does this plot go? And then enter Melanie Griffith and Holly Body and the Jake's journey into the underworld of LA pornography, which reminded me a lot of Paul Schrader's Hardcore. However, Paul Schrader's Hardcore takes a very more visceral, grittier look at it, but it's almost the same plot, where Jake passes himself off in this as a porn star, but later on a porn producer. And George C. Scott does the same thing to get into the porn scene. And was it in LA or San Francisco? I forget which one. So that he can find out where his daughter is. But they follow a very similar journey, except Body Double is this candy-colored, like heightened reality version of that.
Yes. And you know another movie that this reminds me of? The Stuntman.
It does have that kind
Richard
of dreamy,
Rush's movie.
yeah, this which I watched recently again, and it definitely has that dreamy fairy tale kind of like
And a bit of sleaze.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was Richard Rush for you too.
Yeah.
He liked some sleazy stuff.
And also the fact that you can't really differentiate fantasy from reality. There are many similarities if you think about it. Also, of course, the overall aesthetic of the stuntman is almost purposely tacky,
It is.
just like Body Double.
And like
So
And like Body Double, when you see the making of the so-called porn movie, which is really just a Frankie Goes to Hollywood music number, it makes no sense as anything that's actually being shot. I mean, it really, even from the point of view of a porn film, they would absolutely not shoot it like that.
Yes.
But the stuntman, when you see those big sequences playing out with these long extended stunts, it's all like any other movie would shoot it in multiple setups. It's just no way that those scenes that happen in the stuntman are one-take scenes for movies like that. They're ridiculous. They really are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the Peter O'Toole performance and Barbara Hershey in anything saves it for me. But I enjoy the stuntman, but not on the level that I enjoy a movie. We're going to talk about it in a further episode, Freebie and the Bean.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a fun conversation.
Which is a great Richard Rush film. But just back Double. So when Melanie Griffith and that whole plot line comes in, it is surprising, and I do like that twist in the storytelling. But just to go back a bit in terms of forbidden films and the controversial aspect of Body Double, which again is De Palma putting a beautiful woman in jeopardy and then following through by murdering her in a very visceral, politically incorrect way, which is you have the Greg Henry disguised as the Indian character use a huge electric drill because I think it was originally used to drill through the safe to get to a jewelry, but he plugs it in the wall, which I think is kind of ridiculous. And at one point, we again De Palma toys with us because we think he's gonna save her because as he like brings the drill up to her back and like maybe even pierces her, the plug goes out of the wall. And
Yes.
we think, oh my God, she's saved. But no, De Palma is cruel in that sense. De Palma likes to toy with you and have the audience think these characters are going to be let off the hook, so to speak, and then he fucks you and he kills them. And he kills them in Body Double in a way where, and he may deny that this was his intent to provoke, but when you see the drill coming down between his legs like a massive penis and drilling into her, he knew. I can't believe he didn't know that that was going to push buttons. And
But
he
it's
tells the
funny, but it's funny that you are saying that it's a politically incorrect murder, as if any murder should be politically correct, right? It's like,
no, the aesthetics and how they're represented on screen can be done in so many different ways. And De Palma likes the gore and likes, in a very, like Dario Argento. There's no denying that Dario Argento loves to slash beautiful women to pieces on screen. He just does. I don't know if I enjoy the cruelty of that and how far that gets taken, especially in Argento's movies, which are way gorier and more explicit than anything De Palma does.
and
But
tackier.
yeah, although the women look have that De Palma elegance, and you've got that Italian production design in the early Argentos when he could afford that. They're very good-looking films and uh, slick films. But in Body Double, in the De Palma documentary, expressed surprise that the critics tore him apart for that, and the women's groups and feminists and all of that. And I don't know how you can't feel that that was coming when you shoot the scene that way. Clearly, there was provocation in mind when he did that. And I'm not saying he's wrong to do it. I think it's a ballsy move. And I don't think
Yeah,
it's
I don't see anything wrong with it at all.
and I don't think that a filmmaker shouldn't be able to do that today if that's
And also, like I said, it's ironic, it's tongue in cheek, whatever word you want to use,
it's
it
very
means
tongue in
basically the
cheek.
same thing. So the thing is, um, you should be able, especially when you're doing something that's tongue in cheek, to do pretty much whatever you want. I mean, obviously,
Well,
there's going to always be an exception or two.
the criticism is you bring tongue in cheek at the expense of depicting the murder of helpless women.
Yeah, but once you're in the realm of tongue in cheek, it's very difficult to accuse somebody of doing something immoral in
But
a
I'm with
credible way.
you. The
Yeah.
tone of Body Double is not serious at all. It's very dreamy and it's very lurid and it goes down very easy like the movie is basically saying don't take this seriously. This is all of this is Hollywood fakery that you're seeing. And it's a tip of the hat to Hitchcock and it's all of that. But people will still be outraged because that's how people are prone to be. And if you
Yes.
had social media back in that time, it would have blown up. I mean, as it was, De Palma, I mean, the movie was not successful. And it's only in retrospect that the reputation of the film, I don't know if the reputation has grown in the way that Scarface has, but people enjoy Body Double. They get a kick out of it, and it's. I mean, I have really good memories of dying to see Body Double when I heard about it, and finally getting hold of it, and or going driving way out of the way hours to get to a movie theater that was just outside the South African borders to see Body Double, and so it was pure mainlining the De Palma. It was everything I expected of De Palma, and
And by the way, the
it's
pursuit of a movie can be a great source of inspiration in and of itself.
Yeah,
So,
it's crazy when it is crazy. All of this makes you into the person and the filmmaker you become. You know, the idea that there's a kid somewhere in a foreign country who is beyond excited, even if he should. And I don't think I was too young to see Body Double when it came out. I think it came out when I was 18, maybe, or 19. But the idea that the expectation of a new De Palma movie and one that sort of checks all the De Palma boxes. And again, a film that was controversial and a film that, if you saw the trailer to Body Double, it looked like, I mean, De Palma was completely on brand as 80s De Palma of the erotic thriller. So, and Pino Donagio's score is excellent and lush. And I love even, and De Palma is not phoning it in. He's not phoning it in as a film. Like
no.
in the opening scene after he's left the movie set, the vampire movie set, and then De Palma puts the title over like a backdrop of like the desert or something. And then pulls back, the camera pulls, or that moves out of frame, and you see it's on the studio lot, and he shows you the most cliched version of a movie lot, of a back lot, where people are dressed in astronaut costumes, and
Yes.
and all things. It's like he's feeding you the nutrient deficient processed food version of a Brian De Palma movie. There is nothing nutritious in this film for you. It is pure joy and guilty pleasure, right?
That's right. But like I said, the fact that he also satirizes everything that he's doing in this movie turns it into a morality tale. It just does. Because whenever you are using irony in relation to dramatic events, there's at the very least there's an implicit commentary in one way or another. It just has to be that way.
Well, Dennis
Because
Franz
otherwise, like in other words,
is
if De Palma had no equivocations, right? If he just wholeheartedly endorsed the actions that he's depicting in all of these movies and in all of his movies in general, not just the ones that we've been talking about today, then he probably wouldn't have a tongue-in-cheek approach to the material. He would just in earnest tell the story.
I mean, I don't think De Palma gets to Body Double without having gone through Dress to Kill and Blowout and Sisters and Carrie and I mean, he's carrying the weight into Body Double of his cinematic alter ego, and he serves it all up. He serves up the intrigue. He serves up
Yes.
the beautiful De Palma woman. He serves up the homicidal maniac. He serves up the twisty plot. He serves up the nudity. He serves up Pino Donaggio. I mean, it's De Palma in its purest form,
Hmm.
even if it isn't as inspired as Dress to Kill, and certainly not as grounded and cinematic jaw dropping as Blowout
No,
and
in some ways, it's a
cynical.
sampler. It's a Brian De Palma
Yeah,
sampler.
it is. And in that sense, it gives you the warm and fuzzies, right? Even
Yes.
while being this super controversial movie. And Dennis Franz is playing De Palma because he's wearing the De Palma safari suit or the whatever you call that utility jacket. I don't know, whatever. But clearly he feels like he's doing De Palma.
Stephen
Um,
Bauer's in this movie.
yeah, I was going to mention that. And wasn't he married to Melanie Griffith at the time?
Um, I'm not sure if he was married to her at the time, but let me check actually.
One of my big issues with the setup with Greg
He
Henry's
was
plot,
married to her, by the way.
with these plot machinations, is how Jake goes to the telescope to watch who he thinks is Gloria Revel dancing in the window,
Yes.
but it's really it's really Holly Body dancing, and it's in her bedroom. So my question is, where the fuck is Gloria Revel when this is happening? And De Palma doesn't even attempt to address that. Is Greg Henry drugging her? I mean, it's this big fucking hole in the film, unless I'm too stupid to recognize what the answer is to that.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't know if we need to take some of these things literally because,
But that's a big one. I
but
mean,
like for
that's
example,
like,
Vertigo, right? Which is one of my favorite films. I have so many favorites. I have hundreds, if not 1,000, on my giant list of favorite films. But Vertigo is not at all a realistic film. It operates on its own highly specific dream logic. If you took the movie literally, you could just spend all day pointing out the plot holes and things that are
but I
implausible, if
don't
not
think
impossible.
Vertigo has a plot hole as big as this. That
Oh, well,
doesn't
yeah, that
even
might be, but
because remember he's watching the telescope, and then later on, Greg Henry's character comes back to the house and goes into the bedroom and opens the safe, and he's taking jewels, and then she wakes up to the Deborah Shelton character now, and he slaps her around. So how did she suddenly like come in the bedroom? I mean, I think it's on a different night, but still, I may be wrong about that, but still, when Holly Body is dancing 2 nights in a row or 3 nights or however long it is, where is Gloria Revel? Because it's her bedroom. So I just want
I
that.
think you're gonna have to make a sequel to this movie.
I think I'm just going to have to call up De Palma and ask him.
That you could also do that.
And another interesting thing
Or you can
is
call in right now somehow.
De Palma,
We're live somehow. That's right.
yeah, live in alternate universe. Gloria Revel, the actress who plays her, Deborah Shelton, is dubbed. She's dubbed by that actress Helen Shaver. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't actually.
And I guess she didn't have the right De Palma voice, or maybe she wasn't a particularly strong actress. So there's a lot of dubbing that goes on in these films in terms of like just wiping out somebody's performance. I get it. I mean, you got to protect your movie, and
Yeah.
you got to do what it takes. And but it's really good dubbing. Although I don't know if I like her dubbed voice. I think I have seen movies with Deborah Shelton's real voice, but he gives her kind of like a baby girl voice, like a deeper baby girl voice. I mean, the sync is perfect, but I mean, and again, Gloria Bell, what has 3 lines in the movie, if that. But it is and then the other thing I'll say about Body Double is you could turn off the sound and most likely follow this movie because it's
Yes.
all cinema, it's all visual, it's all sound and music.
We could say the same
And
about all of his films to some extent.
yeah, I guess you could. I mean,
Like for
all of
example,
them.
in Dress to Kill, you could, without any sound at all or any subtitles, you could pretty much figure out what Angie Dickinson's character is doing. Like
That's
let's say
right.
when she's trying to pick someone up or vice versa.
I don't know
You
if we would get the intricacies of sexual hangups that come out in the therapy sessions, but
But it
we
would be
would.
implied nonetheless. I mean, you could certainly get something out of
But
it, even without the
I agree
dialogue.
with you. But I agree with you. All of these movies, you are correct. Maybe, yeah, even Scarface. I think you could watch a silent movies and you would know what's going on
That's right.
because De Palma's movies are pure cinema. They are about image and music and situation. And while Scarface has the best acting, although Blowout has got pretty great performance from Travolta.
Carrie's got great performances,
Yeah, Carrie, and she
Untouchables.
was and Sissy Spacek was
And
nominated,
Piper Laurie's astonishing.
and Untouchables has got great performances, and
Sean
Connery won the
Connery's
Oscar.
astonishing in that movie.
It's astonishing that Brian De Palma has never been nominated. In
Not
fact,
only
oh, and
that, he
that's
should
another
get
one.
an honorary Oscar. It's ridiculous that he hasn't
It's about
received one.
fucking time. You know, give him the honorary Oscar. Come on, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and all the, how have they not made that happen? It
I don't know.
boggles my mind.
I've thought about that a lot over the years.
And I think that's about it for Body Double, unless there's anything else. Like I mentioned earlier that De Palma was seriously considering casting Annette Haven. Is that her name? I think it's her name, Annette Haven, who was this beautiful and still around. She was this beautiful 70s and 80s porn star. And I actually think he should have cast her in the role of Gloria Revel because I think she would have been perfect for Gloria Revel. but I don't think she had the spunk or would have had the spunk that Melanie Griffith brings to Body Double. There's a certain like feistiness that Melanie Griffith brings to that role. But
Yes.
but Annette Haven was probably, I would go as far as say, the most beautiful porn star that I've ever seen. So De Palma apparently got to know her, whatever that means, and again was provoking the studio by telling them he was going to cast her. And I know he did a he admits he did a screen test with her and Melanie Griffith, but I kind of wish he would have cast Annette Haven in the Gloria Revel role because she would have fit that role. And Annette Haven was a pretty decent actress. She wasn't a terrible actress, and I bet De Palma could have got a performance out of her. And Gloria Revel has 3, 4 lines, or she's on the phone talking about like her lover and all of that at the hotel, which was shot down in Long Beach when Jake follows her to those beach cottages, which is a great location.
Yes.
And then I guess it didn't work. It didn't work out. I guess De Palma backed down, or he didn't think Annette Haven could deliver the performance he needed. So but the studio was freaking out, and they were saying you can't do this, and you can't cast a porn movie because the studio was owned by, I believe it was Sony. Was it Sony at the time? And there was some family aspect to what they would do that they had involvement with. I'm trying to remember what that was, but it was like, you're not putting a porn star in this movie. And I don't think De Palma chose not to put her in the movie because he was intimidated by what the studio executive said. I think he just ultimately felt it would not work performance wise for the film. But she was on the set apparently, or gave a lot of technical advice, and he said a lot of the dialogue that Melanie Griffith delivers about the porn business and some of that stuff that I was probably mentioned that was probably censored in the versions I originally saw. I'm sure those were direct quotes from Annette Haven.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. So maybe let's end with this little game. Which Hitchcock film do you think of first when I say Dress to Kill? When I say each of his overt Hitchcock homage-a-thons, which is the first Hitchcock film that comes to mind?
Well,
So
when
I,
you say Dress to Kill, definitely Psycho for me.
and when I say Blowout, what comes to mind first?
Blowout. That's an
Or
interesting one.
maybe one doesn't, maybe one in particular doesn't jump out at you, but I'm just
Well,
asking.
Blowout does not jump out at me as being a very
Well, I think Rear Window, that would be my answer.
I would say Rear Window's Body Double.
Well, definitely when yeah, that was my next question about Body Double. And
Like
definitely Rear Window first, but Body Double has overt references, or at least it borrows elements from many different
yeah,
Hitchcock films, including Vertigo.
definitely replaces the Vertigo aspect with claustrophobia, but he's definitely doing a kind of a Vertigo character there.
Yes.
You said there was a Marnie connection to what film did you say was that? Dress to Kill?
Yes, because the wigs,
Right.
uh, you know, are featured prominently in Marnie. The main character changes her appearance.
And I also feel Carlito's Way feels a little bit Hitchcockian in that they're on the run all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
Not to mention the train station
yeah.
sequence. Yeah, I mean, there's just well, first of all, every film he ever made or has made up to this point contains Hitchcockian elements. I mean, first of all, it's in the formalism, but then it's also in some of the thematic content.
And remember, De Palma, while at the same time having like the signature erotic thriller, conspiracy thriller sort of brand, also became a big studio director
That's right.
and launched the Mission Impossible franchise, which his film was excellent, and maybe I don't, I'm not a big aficionado of the Mission Impossible movies, but I definitely think it's De Palma's movie and McQuarrie's first one, the one that has like the scenes in the opera in the beginning, and I forget the name of that specific Mission Impossible film. I think those are the two best of the series.
De
And then,
Palma's Mission Impossible movie is in many ways the most eccentric,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily in any conventional sense an action movie.
But because it's De Palma, it has visual scenes that have entered again the popular culture. How many films have made fun of the Tom Cruise lowering himself into the CIA vault?
Countless.
I mean, De Palma is a master of creating these iconic scenes. And the other one, Tom Cruise running away from the fish tank or the aquarium that explodes behind him. There,
Yes.
wherever De Palma goes, he creates iconic visual
Well, his use of
sporadic
subjective
sequences.
camera techniques, particularly point of view shots, they bring Hitchcock to mind right away. And that's also in like that tech or those techniques are used in almost all of his films. I'd have to think hard about it to think if there's an exception. But like let's say in
Um,
The Untouchables, for example, when the goon tries to break into Sean Connery's apartment, right? Or like
right.
if you think about it, various subjective camera techniques are in each
Well,
one of his
I think
films.
if there's
I'd have
a
to do like a detailed analysis of each
I think
film
if there's
for me
a
to decide
camera
exception.
technique that is most associated with Brian De Palma, it has to be the split diopter.
Well, that
I
also.
think he's Tombstone will be a split diopter. Uh, but I wanted to mention, going back to Dress to Kill, the museum sequence, I think is the most accomplished sequence De Palma has ever directed throughout all his films for me. I love that sequence. I love the jump from point of view to frontal tracking. I don't even know if it was done on Steadicam, if they had the Steadicam at that point, because he talks about in Blowout that he got introduced to the Steadicam. So I'm going to assume it was done on Dolly, possibly, because you had the smooth museum floors. But the way he jumps from point of view and the dance to Pino Donaggio's museum track, and it's a silent movie in of itself. It's a perfect silent movie. And Dress to Kill is so fucking smart. And like De Palma is firing on all cylinders in Dress to Kill because I watched it 2 nights ago and I saw something I'd never seen in the previous 20, 30 times I watched the movie. And that's in the very beginning of the film when Angie Dickinson comes into Michael Caine's office. There's like a Bobby character that passes her and is just leaving. And I had never seen that before.
Wow.
Did you pick up on that?
Maybe not.
Like a blonde
Um,
woman in a coat that I think
oh
was a
no, then
dark.
I probably did only because I mentioned before um
This
that
is
like
inside the office, and she's leaving. It's not from outside the building. And as Angie Dickinson's
well
coming
there are a
in,
number of shots. I'd have to look at that scene again specifically, but there are a number of shots throughout the movie where
well, the other one, which I don't know that I picked up on the first or second, even third time I saw it, and it might have been due to the lack of clarity of the copies I was seeing, is when she comes out of the museum and she sees the guy in the cab and he's waving his the glove at her, and the camera pans from her across to the guy in the cab. And when it does that, it crosses Bobby again, and she's standing there, and it's fucking there. It's great, and it's like it's so quick, but she's there. And do you remember that one?
yeah, I do. But the thing is, in general, and I remarked about it at the time when we were discussing the movie, he's obsessed with the artifice of how these characters look, including that character.
But
That's
the
part of what he's doing.
but he's bearing her in the frame
Yeah.
in a way that you may not necessarily be aware of. So you have to go back and watch Dress to Kill a couple of times because there's so many times where she is there, but you haven't picked up on her, like the opening scene in Michael Caine's office.
Hmm.
And also, what I love during the sequence where the guy is waiting in the cab, where he pulls her into the cab, he then cuts to a very obvious but obviously intentional split diopter where Bobby's hand comes into frame in a sideways split diopter, and she grabs up the glove.
Yes.
And then there are also subtle split diopters when Michael Caine goes to the institution to talk to the shrink who's treating Bobby, which is really him. And the way he plays that performance, because the shrink is in on this, but Michael Caine is not. It's such a creepy scene.
It
But he has
is.
them coming down the stairs, and they stop at one point, and Michael Caine is above the psychiatrist or the therapist, but but again, De Palma's using a subtle split diopter, and he's keeping them both in focus. And again, your eye doesn't register the fact that they shouldn't both be in focus. It's really good. The same thing when, and these are more obvious split diopters, but not that obvious, when Angie Dickinson goes back into the bedroom to find her ring, and she's looking, and then she has the memory of it on the nightstand. And De Palma uses a split diopter there where her face is in the foreground and then she's imagining the ring. Excellent there. I mean,
Yes.
there's such good technique. I would say that Dress to Kill is the purest, like De Palma at, I think, the height of his skills in terms of this kind of movie, where the script is the best version of it. I'm talking about the erotic thriller,
Yes.
and his cinematic chops are just firing on all cylinders. It is such a well-crafted movie. It's such a well-scored movie, so well shot, so well performed. While I love Blowout, and I find the plotline maybe just a little bit more engaging than Dress to Kill because it's functioning maybe in more of a real world. And there's so many great set pieces in Blowout. I don't know. I may think I like Blowout and Dress to Kill on the same shelf. I may care for them about the same amount because Dress to Kill definitely gets better and better in my book, and Blowout never loses its power. But I think Dress to Kill, in my estimation, rises to the power of Blowout. But I love the scene where Travolta witnesses the car getting the tire shot out and dives into the river. And right before right as the car hits the river, De Palma has that reaction, Jesus fucking Christ. And then that Pinot Donaggio track starts with a loud bum, bum. And it's my favorite Donaggio track, along with the ending where he's trying to save Nancy Allen. But there's so much great craft in cinema in his work, and that's where I always keep coming back to with Brian De Palma. And he has inspired me a lot. But I mean, I would love to do a full De Palma style, erotic thriller. And I came close recently, but the project fell apart because it couldn't get financed. But it would still be a blast to do that kind of movie because I haven't done one yet.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of potential for those kinds of movies.
But you would have to find a very game cast who you would have to find an actress who will concede to do the nudity, classy as I intend it to be. But they have to go for it. Otherwise, it just becomes like a bad Netflix film.
Yeah, you don't want that.
But anyway, I think that is it for De Palma. We covered a lot.
We sure did.
And I'm glad we did it because De Palma is definitely worthy of I don't know how long this conversation is. This feels like it's gone 3 hours. And we will be back next time with another controversial, informative episode of Forbidden Films.
You can bet on it.